So send me a link so I can send it out.
Retweet the Inside the Birds. If you have Inside the Birds.
Don't do it now. Welcome to Inside the Birds pregame live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave in Philadelphia. It's where everybody loves a winner, and that includes the NLDS champion Philadelphia Phillies. True winners, all right. We got a lot of winners to talk about tonight, along with the Phillies, the Philadelphia Eagles, and our man Jason Avant there with his Michigan Wolverines. We have a score to settle tonight that I am happy to settle. So stick with us for the end of the show.
We'll be the judge of that.
Yeah, well, stick with us for the end of the show, and I will make good on my friendly bet with Jason Avant. I'm Geoff Mosher. This is Adam Caplan of Inside the Birds. You've already seen Mr. Michigan, Jason Avant, and back with us as always, our tape breakdown guru, Greg Cosell. How's it going, gentlemen? You guys ready for a big game?
Big game tonight.
All right,
ready to roll.
Yeah,
it is a huge game. I know, look at you. He's all, man, you got Penn State, Michigan Saturday.
Oh, man, this is
Eagles,
a great
Cowboys.
weekend. You got the Phillies win. This is a great weekend.
Oh, what a weekend for you.
Yeah.
Me, hopefully you can get better, but you know.
You like the Phils?
I do like the Phillies.
You and I are like
that was
diehard Phillies.
That was great. That was great. All right, the moment has arrived. It is Eagles. It's been Cowboys week.
Cowboys
all
week.
Yeah, but it was a little bit obscured by the Phillies, by other things going on, but it shouldn't be because the Eagles bring a 5-0 record to the link tonight to play their division rival Dallas Cowboys, who are on a hot streak themselves. The Cowboys have won 4 straight games. They come at 4-1, and all 4 wins with backup quarterback Cooper Rush. This is a showdown of 2 of the hottest teams in the NFL, so it should be an excellent environment right here at Jack's Bar and Grill in Rivers Casino. It's already kicking. I mean, I counted about a half dozen Jason Kelce jerseys just alone. Yeah. And then you always get your Seths, you always get your Reggie, but all of a sudden, a lot of Jason Kelce jerseys.
How many Adam Caplan jerseys?
0.
Haven't seen one yet.
But there's a car dealer here. Always versus Bobby Hoying, number 14.
Yeah.
Always. I love it.
Well, we even saw a Bobby Hoying jersey. All right. Maybe we'll get that Caplan one next week. I saw an Avant jersey, Jay. Actually, I did see an 81.
81
so I'm going to call that an Avant jersey and pretend it's not another 81.
Duct tape on the back of it.
Yeah. All right, well, look, if the Eagles win tonight, they are going to stay in first place, and they'll actually have a 2-game lead over Dallas. If the Dallas Cowboys win this game, fellas, they take control of first place in the NFC East. So imagine that, your first loss of the year, and already you might be in second.
That's it. The Giants somehow came back and beat the Ravens today.
That is correct.
They're 5-1. They're 5-1. Can you believe that?
It's not the NFC East.
No,
it is not. All right, we're going to break the game down from A to Z here. There's a lot of good stuff for Eagles Cowboys in here. So I really look forward to talking with you gentlemen. A lot of stuff to break down schematically. And of course, there's plenty of time to get down here to Rivers Casino and Sportsbook before kickoff tonight. Although it's a mob. I mean, you can get here, but you're going to have to struggle to find a parking spot. But there are great food and drink specials here at Jack's Bar and Grill. You can place your wagers. There's still plenty of time. It's an awesome environment. So please come join us and check out the show if you want. For those watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment for us in the chat box, leave a score prediction, and we will try to get to it as the show goes on. You guys ready?
Let's roll.
We're going to dive into the X and O's in a second, but this is the type of game that always calls for a big picture outlook. Jason, just in general, I know we ask you this kind of every year, but this is different. This is a Dallas team, 4 straight wins, and an Eagles team that's undefeated. This would probably be the type of game that you just relish playing, I would think, right?
I would love to play in a game like this. They always say, big time players love, big plays and big moments. Like when you're a player that relishes in the crowd watching you, and receivers are most of the time in a Sunday night game where everyone is watching and you want to show off your talent, your ability. If you're a ball player, the guys that's going to show up in big moments, this is the game for you. So you love playing in these because you make a name around the league in these types of games because no one else gets a chance to see you that much.
Leading up as a player, like the night before, because it's Dallas and it just so happens both teams are really good.
Yeah.
And you playing here, and you as a player, you probably knew what the fans thought of Dallas.
Yeah.
Was it a thing where you were extra amped, or did it matter?
Well, the fans seep into the way that you think here in Philadelphia. because this is the town that you have a neighbor that's a Dallas Cowboys fan, right? You have a cousin or a family member that's born and raised in Philadelphia that's busting your chops about what Emmitt Smith did in 1901, right? So they're always talking about these different things, right? And it kind of seeps over into you as a player, and they kind of get you riled up about this game. So yes, you're nervous, you're amped, you're going through all those emotions, and you just hate the fact that they think that they're America's team, and the arrogance behind it, and all those things that players dislike, and them not being able to split, their portion of the revenue share when it comes to apparel. DCMB is separate,
right,
and just all of this extra treatment they get. We don't like it.
Did you ever think Andy, as head coach, had a little extra edge on him, or it didn't matter?
Well, Andy wanted to just dominate the NFC East in general.
Gotcha.
So,
you guys did.
So he wants to dominate this division, and he's dominated every division that he's been in.
Quite frankly,
because if you give him seeing the same defenses all the time, you're going to be Swiss cheese after a while.
Yeah. By the way, Jason would like to wish Emmitt Smith a happy 121st birthday. Greg, this is a game where we're going to talk a lot about individuals who are excellent on both sides, and sometimes this is a game where the play callers get lost but shouldn't. Guys like Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen. When you look at this matchup, I mean, are this cat and mouse game between them will probably be a big determining factor in how this game goes. Are these guys talked about enough in your mind around the league as excellent at what they do?
You mean the guys you just mentioned?
Specifically the play callers. Yeah.
I mean, you could make an argument. I had this conversation actually with Steve Young a couple of years ago, and he said that when it comes to offense, that the play caller is the most important person on your offense.
Sure.
Because the way the game has evolved, because the game, and it's funny, we were talking about this before we started, the game has evolved to where you're not really asking quarterbacks now to go through 3-4 reads.
Right.
The game has changed, let's say back when Bill Walsh coached it.
Yeah.
So now you're really asking your quarterbacks, because you have to coach what you're given.
Yeah.
The quarterbacks playing in college are not taught to go through 3-4 reads.
Right.
That's not the way it works.
Right.
So now it's the play caller who has to define the reads and the throws for the quarterback, ideally with the first read, but that can't happen 100% of the time, obviously. But then the second read.
Right.
And after that, because so many of these quarterbacks have movement ability, they end up moving. So the play callers, you could argue, are extremely important, particularly in a game like this.
Sure. And what Greg is talking about, everyone notices the college game. When the play's called, you see the entire offense look over at the side. Right? You're actually taking the ability for the quarterback to think away by doing that. Right? And that's what we're talking about. And all these guys are being inherited by teams in the NFL.
So Adam almost made our listeners' eyes fall out. I know nobody told me that, but I can see it, because on the podcast to preview this game, he even mentioned, he floated the idea of an Eagles-Cowboys NFC Championship game this year. Now, the interesting thing about that, and to your point about Andy wanting to just win, is that there have not been that many years where the Eagles and Cowboys were this good in the same year. In fact, they've only played each other once in the playoffs in the last 25 years.
Really?
I remember.
Once.
It didn't go well.
It didn't go. It was Donovan McNabb's final game.
I remember
the guitar game.
Yeah, the air guitar game, as we like to call it.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
Adam, were you
first
trying
play
to get
right in the
everybody
dirt.
crazy?
I just listen. I didn't know Dallas was this good. I thought, I thought the Eagles were one of the best teams in the NFC and probably in the NFL coming into the season. I didn't know Dallas was going to be this good, because the Eagle fan growing up here, they always think Dallas will choke. They'll find some way to do something stupid. It's Jerry Jones, but you know what? Here's the funny thing. You say what you want about Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones' son, they draft really well.
Yeah.
For many years, Jerry in the early 2000s, he was kind of like Daniel Snyder. Let's go sign the big free agent. Let's go trade for Roy Williams, the receiver, not the safety who he drafted.
Right.
And it would wind up not working. So he jumped that. More often than not, they just draft and develop, and they're doing a very good job of it. And look, the bottom line is, this is the first time in many years that they're not only good at the same time, they're playing each other at the same time and being very good.
They are.
So the hype here with the Phillies now winning yesterday, Flyers and Sixers starting this week, they're alone today. This is the game of the nation. We've got it here in Philly.
It will be a great game to break down, great game to watch. Also impressive about these two teams, battling injuries, yet being able to persevere week after week, whether it's Dallas on a backup quarterback, the Eagles had several players out, and that brings us to our injury report because the news got a lot better, Adam, for the Eagles throughout the week. There was a lot of skepticism, I'd say by Monday and even Tuesday, whether guys like Avonte Maddox, Jake Elliott, and Jordan Mailata were going to play. And then also, there was a kind of a waiting game as to what was going to happen with Andre Dillard. So why don't we start with the three guys who there was skepticism on. With Jake Elliott, we'll start. What do you know?
Yeah, so in fact, we found out Friday, after we taped our show, we found out that he was going to play. His big test, like all these players, was on Thursday. And then what happens is, and we'll get to Mailata, his is the big one.
Yeah.
Is what he had to get through, as you know, to be able to play. But is the soreness after you kick for the first time in practice, because remember they had a walkthrough on Wednesday. His went well, and then Mailata is the big one though.
Right.
That's the one, and I know you have some information here. We're told that pain tolerance thing, he kind of was able to deal with it.
Yes.
It was the range of motion in the injured shoulder. Last week was too stiff. Monday and Tuesday, they weren't sure, and whatever treatment he got, it worked, it kicked in, and he tested it Thursday, it went well, and they were like, okay, let's hope there were no problems waking up on Friday.
Right.
And there were none. It's just, as you set this up, everything that could go right went right.
Right. So I want to throw this to Jason about Mailata. What we've learned is that what was a pain tolerance issue is not so much anymore. It's not about pain. It's about range of motion on a right shoulder, okay? So that means there's still something going on there, but at least the treatment is working. And as it was told to me within the last 24 hours, he's going to go and give it a shot, but you really got to watch and see how he's able to do against these Dallas pass rushers.
Yep.
I know you don't play offensive line. I'm sure you've had some shoulder discomfort before and range of motion issues. How difficult is it to fully perform your task when either your arm, your shoulder, your leg, something doesn't have full range of motion?
He's hurt. And that's stuff. right. You can say all the stuff prior to that. He's hurt, and you're dealing with a bunch of guys that are super athletic. One of the most athletic fronts, in the National Football League. Guys that can bend, guys that's going to put your body in a position that you're not used to. So will it affect him? Yes, it will. If he has to stab with that arm at Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence or Dorrance Armstrong, like whoever that may be. And those guys are coming with a lot of force. And just think about you trying to stop a person with a hurt shoulder and extend and also absorb that.
Right.
Yes, that's extremely hard to do.
Right, well,
so he's just hurt.
It's not just extend. You need some force.
Yeah,
you don't just put your arms out.
You got to absorb that.
But when you extend, you're going to feel it in
yeah.
your injured arm or injured shoulder in this case.
And they're trying to knock it down. You're trying to regain it. It's a bunch of things that's going on.
And they know what shoulder it's because it's on the tape. They have that tape from the Jacksonville game, I think it was.
They'll deliver a few shots to it.
All right, well, we're told he might be wearing a protective harness that you might not be able to see. It might be underneath the uniform. It might look a little bit cushier than normal, but they're doing everything they can to get him out there to be able to play. It's weird because they do have the bye week coming up. They've got Andre Dillard ready, so maybe this is like, we'll see if he can handle it, and if not.
But it's Dallas.
But it's Dallas.
It's Dallas. That's the thing.
Right.
It's Dallas, and this team in general doesn't do a lot of it, but we may see some of it tonight, is adding extra people to the line of scrimmage in order to protect the pass. They're not used to doing it, and usually you don't have to with most NFL pass rushers, but with this team, they have some. We're going to get into it later.
We're going to get into it later.
We'll get into the details here.
We'll definitely get into that. Real last thing on Avonte Maddox, Adam. It was an ankle sprain, so it sounds like he's going to give it a go. But Jay, as a skill position player who ankle, you're a wide receiver. I bet you played some D-back at some level.
Yeah.
How difficult might that be for him?
If it's not like a high ankle sprain and it's a normal ankle sprain, you can play through those things. I've sprained ankles and played the next day, or so it all depends on if it's a high ankle sprain or not. But yes, you can overcome an ankle sprain. There's guys that do it a lot.
He was able to put his ankle into the ground, stop, start, run, and look, this is big, man. To have all their players be able to play. And as you said, they got the bye week. If they're sore, they can't finish the game. Shut them down. Let them get through the bye week, and then get them going for, who do they have?
Pittsburgh Steelers with a big win over Tampa Bay.
Somehow beat the Bucs.
I don't necessarily know how much they'll need Avonte Maddox in this game, though. Just with how much the Dallas Cowboys are running the football.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Although with CeeDee Lamb in the slot, you would think that would be an important matchup, but we'll see. The other good news is with Mailata intending to start tonight, Jason Kelce seems good to go for now. Landon Dickerson seems good to go. So some of the concerns about the offensive line for the moment become allayed, and then obviously Driscoll goes back to being a backup. And again, you have Andre Dillard there in case he needs to be called on. So that's good for them. Kenny Gainwell, good to go, I believe. With
a rib. He got cleared. The only one that they're really concerned about would be Josh Jobe, only plays on special teams.
Right.
And that's really it. No, Samala's fine with the ankle. We're looking at it is amazing how all of a sudden, late in the week, they're all good to go. So that's great news, because with Dallas coming in, man.
Yes.
This is what I was saying on our show Friday. If you're not at full strength, and with this team coming in on defense, let me ask Greg one question.
Yeah.
Not that you're ranking, but is Dallas the best team you've seen on defense on tape this season?
I would say they're the most challenging.
Okay. We'll get into that. Okay.
You know, again, best is a word I struggle sometimes to use.
I know you don't like the
but
rankings.
They're very challenging.
They're challenging.
Yes.
They're challenging.
Not the most sound.
Would you agree?
Well,
Yes.
We'll get into those challenges. I promise.
They're very challenging.
Got it.
All right. Andre Chachere has been elevated from the practice squad for the Eagles. He'll be available. A good special teams player, and we know that Eagles special teams has been kind of this year, so it's always good to have as many reinforcements there as possible. As for Dallas, very interesting that Dak Prescott's not going to start, but he is questionable on the injury report. You would think maybe if something happened to Cooper Rush, if they needed to go to the backup,
is he going to be active?
Yeah, I think
Jay
Glazer said on Fox this morning that he will not be active.
Oh, he won't be
He's
active.
going to throw. We're going to see how it goes in pregame. Then if it all goes well, he gets cleared most likely for next week's game at home against the Lions.
What do you know about CeeDee Lamb? He appeared
good,
late.
but that one I heard. His hip tightened up. They just said, just back him off. He didn't work Friday. They believe he'll be able to go. See, all these injuries, when we're home tonight, all these injuries that we've listed, I want to watch these guys move tonight.
Yeah.
Lamb with a hip, Mailata with that right shoulder extended, as Greg was talking, Kenny Power extend, and watching Maddox stick that ankle on the ground, watching Jake Elliott, apparently we were told, looked really good. I'm going to say Thursday's practice, because that was the real. Wednesday was the walkthrough.
Right.
So that's good, man. So far, so good. We'll see what happens in the game.
And I guess outside of Dak Prescott, most of Dallas's guys will be, if not all, will be able to go. Some of them nursing injuries. We know, like their defensive tackle, Quentin Bohanna, was dealing with a neck, and Micah Parsons a groin.
The one is Dalton Schultz with his PCL sprain. He re-injured it last week.
Yeah.
He's supposed to play. He's not an athletic guy. He just gets open a lot, but you saw he crushed the Eagles last year. This is interesting because I don't care if you're on the field or not, you got to be able to run.
Yeah, Jay, I've seen linemen play through offensive linemen play through PCL injuries because they're basically, most of them, especially guards, front backward. I'm kind of surprised that a tight end is playing through a PCL injury. Should I not be?
A tight end can play through a PCL. It's not like the receiver doing it, that's all speed. Tight ends get open not only with vertical in this league, but they can get open with body presence and being able to push off and leverage. Like Brent Selleck couldn't run the best, but he can use his leverage and things like that in order to get open.
Break in and break out though?
Well, they do, but they can push. They get away with more.
By the way, he's also wearing a brace, from what I understand.
All right, he's wearing a brace.
He was, yeah.
That makes sense. All right, well, that's pretty much it for the injury report. Compared to other teams, I think obviously Dallas would love to have a starting quarterback, but they've made it through. But we're seeing week after week, some teams got a laundry list of injuries. So the Eagles and Dallas Cowboys should be in fairly good shape tonight for their game. As we mentioned, one of these teams tonight will stand atop the NFC East, although I suppose if Dallas wins, they're tied with the Giants, because they have not played. If the Eagles win, big opportunity to put some distance between them and the Dallas Cowboys, with the Giants still left. Now, every time these teams have played more recently, the games have been all over the map. You guys remember the Ben DiNucci game from a couple of years ago?
Wow.
It just hasn't had this kind of a feel in quite a while. Last year, Dallas won both games. Obviously a blowout, but then the last game.
Oh, they rested everyone, right?
Rested everybody, yeah.
So if anybody's wondering about the overall history of the series, the Eagles are 53-69 overall, but they have lost 7 of their last 10 games, including 3 straight to Dallas. So obviously the Eagles kind of want to end it. They're a different team. They are built to contend. We said that at the beginning of the year. They are now built to contend in these games, and maybe even more than contend with a team like Dallas. So let's talk about that defense that we were getting into before, because this is going to be a different style of defense they're seeing this week as opposed to what they saw last week. Arizona Cardinals, very blitz heavy with their scheme. If Dallas stays true to itself, they're not a heavy blitzing team. I believe about 25% of the time, them and the Eagles are pretty much neck and neck with how much they like to send pressure. However, the Cowboys have the NFL's third most hurries, second most quarterback hits, second most sacks, and they lead the NFL in pressures. So again, last week, the Cardinals were a heavy blitzing team, but they were very low in sacks. This is a 4-man rush team who does an excellent job of getting to the quarterback. So what do you see, Craig, when you look at this team schematically on tape?
Well, they're very, very multiple with their front looks. Okay, they've got a lot of movable chess pieces. So what they do a lot of is they'll stand people up. They have a lot of what we call amoeba fronts, where people are standing up and moving around before the snap of the ball, and it makes it a little more challenging to sort out who you're going to block. It's not so easy just to say, hey, that's my guy because he's right there in front of me. And then if you're doing some kind of zone protection, slide protection, that kind of thing, to sort out who you have becomes a little more difficult. It's also a team that has stunted more than any other team in the league by a wide margin.
Right.
Yes.
So I would love for you, just because not everybody who watches the show speaks the language, to explain what stunting is and why it's effective.
Well, there's multiple stunt concepts.
Right. Give us the
way
basics.
we talk about stunts is people probably hear it's a TE stunt, it's an ET stunt,
right.
it's a TT stunt. So the way it is with a stunt, there is a penetrator and then there's a looper. The first letter is for the guy who penetrates. So let's say it's a TE stunt. The tackle will penetrate and the end will loop around him.
Sure.
Now, what they do really well too is we have what's called long stunts, where you can loop around two guys. So along those lines, if you then have an ET stunt, the end would be the penetrator and the tackle would be the looper.
Okay.
So a TT stunt would be two guys inside.
Gotcha.
Okay, but they do it not necessarily in the conventional way where guys are just standing, lined up with their hand on the ground in a normal, 50 front, let's call it that. They don't do it just in the conventional way. So stunts are difficult because the penetrator is the one who causes the problem. Because it's the offensive lineman who thinks he has the penetrator who is ultimately being set up.
Right.
Because he has to be in position to slide off that to pick up the looper.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a situation of how you line up with your defensive front.
Right.
It becomes difficult. It's not always easy.
Greg, one thing on that, on today's matchup show, you showed Dallas' front, that amoeba front, the 4 linemen were standing up.
Yep.
What is usually the reaction by the quarterback when that happens? Do they do it a lot, and does it confuse the quarterback? Like, what's the reaction?
I mean, to me, it's more of an O-line issue.
Okay.
I mean, the quarterback has to be aware of it.
Sure.
But most quarterbacks, unless they're going to change the protection, at some point they just have to trust the protection. I mean,
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
it's really an O-line issue. I had a great conversation with an O-line coach this summer, and I'm still trying to understand exactly what he told me.
Yeah.
But he was talking about the difference in the way he teaches it between straight slide protection and what he called sort protection. And he dealt more with the idea of slide protection as the center then would be responsible for a kind of a specific guy in the slide. But in sort protection, it's different because there's usually more guys than you can handle to one side, so you have to kind of sort it out. It's not. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what
Then
you're
you can
saying.
explain it maybe better than I am.
So from the quarterback's perspective, when you're dealing with an amoeba front, you have to study enough to know who's the Mike in these situations, right? So once you identify where the center point of the defense is, now whoever comes to that spot, remember, that's just motion for the defense. The amoeba front is like motion on offense, right? So whoever is going to get to their destination, that's who you block. And that's what we're talking about sorting.
That's the sorting
You're
it out.
sorting
Got it.
an area,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So you know based on who's the Mike, this guy that's going to be in this spot, just have an idea of where these guys like to finish out and you'll be fine. And usually using those protections, they teach the linemen to come straight back. They don't usually set on a 45 because you don't know where they're going, right? But you're sorting out to a spot.
So think of it this way, Jeff. Let's say it's your basic 4 down line front and there's a linebacker that's right behind there, and maybe there's 2 linebackers. Let's say it's a 4-2 nickel. Okay, so the way that would work is the 5 offensive linemen would be responsible for the 4 down linemen if they're in kind of their usual spots, and the person they designate as the Mike linebacker. And then if somebody else comes, then the back would be responsible.
Right.
Okay? Because you can't change your protection in the middle of the play.
In the middle of the play.
Right, so you have to decide, okay, these are the 5 we have, and then if someone else comes, the back, and if someone else were to, in other words, if someone else were to come, let's say, opposite who the back has, then then that would be someone the quarterback would have to deal with.
Right.
Okay? But when you have people just milling about, and there's more than the usual, which they do a lot, then you have to figure out who you have.
You know what teams love to do against this, the really good coordinators, is go fast.
I was just going to say, you're going to see a light tempo.
So that's what you do when they're playing around, they're doing all this stuff. You like to get up to the line of scrimmage and snap the ball quick because they're out of position. And if you sit there and try to check and do all this stuff, you're playing into their strength. Now you're blocking people that are out of position, and if you just run the ball right at that, you're going to get 8-9 yards.
Play speed offense.
I was going to say, we haven't gotten to that, but I was going to say, you're going to see no huddle tempo tonight.
So vital for the Eagles to stay ahead of the sticks in those situations.
In those situations.
And
as far as just the Dallas defense, from what I've seen, just in general with that pass rush, you see a lot of people near the line of scrimmage. There are shots. Usually when you're watching the TV copy, you can see all 11 in the frame. That's unheard of. Right, so I've watched the all 22, and right. So they'll have people near the line of scrimmage, even though they're not rushing. So it's still confusing to the offensive line, which causes pressure. Confusion is pressure for them.
And here's the other factor: is they're trying to create a scenario where you may feel you have to block with more than your 5 offensive linemen, and therefore maybe keep a back end, maybe keep a tight end. Even if they chip, if it's 3rd and long, that means they're not primary receivers in the route.
Right.
So, and what Dan Quinn has evolved into, last year they played more man-to-man cover 1 than any team in the league. This year that percentage is down because one thing Quinn has evolved into is with all that movement, it's a lot of disguise, and then he gets to cover 2, which he's playing more of this year than he ever has.
Wow.
Okay? So now what happens is you see all these people milling about, you think, we have to protect, okay? So now maybe you only send 3 wide receivers out, and 2 other, maybe the tight end in the back, become almost check down or outlet types, and now he's playing 7 in coverage to cover 3 guys. Right.
So let me ask you this. A lot of teams in the last few weeks, to try to keep Jalen Hurts from running on them, have tried to show some discipline in their rush lanes, keep him in, or at least flush him all one way. With a lot of twisting and stunting that you're talking, a lot of line games, you have the ability, I would think, to lose your discipline as far as quarterback runs. So do you think Dallas does less of that, or do the Eagles capitalize with more designed QB runs, or just QB runs to avoid that kind of style of defense?
I will answer that this way. Last year, I haven't seen it much this year, it could be based on who they played, but last year there were opponents in which Micah Parsons was used as a spy. So again, I don't know if that's going to happen tonight, but they did that with Micah Parsons last year. He would show rush to occupy someone because that's what you're trying to do. The term people like to use is waste offensive linemen. You try to waste an offensive lineman, and then he backs off and he spies. And he's fast enough to run down Jalen Hurts.
They have a few guys that can be used in that position that can run with Jalen Hurts. So I don't necessarily think that this is going to be it could be a spy game, but it's not I don't think it's a game where Jalen Hurts is going to run for a lot of yards because this team can run him down. And that's just what I believe. Even if because they have Donovan,
Donovan Wilson,
Donovan Wilson that plays near the line of scrimmage at time. All of these guys can run with him, right? So when you consider all of those things, I don't think this will be something that they're worried about as far as a defensive scheme.
Sure. Yeah. So let's fast forward to let's look at it from an Eagles perspective then, because Dallas has allowed the 3rd fewest points in the NFL. They've only allowed 20 points the last 2 weeks total.
Right.
Based on what you just said, aside from tempo, how will the Eagles best try to attack what Dallas does?
I would.
What would you do if you were the offensive coordinator?
Well, you have to try to establish the run game against this team, especially if they're milling around the line of scrimmage and they're out of position. And I think that they're going to have to be more disciplined, Dallas in general, from what I've seen on tape, there's times where guys are blowing coverages and they're out of position. Like Malik Hooker got beat on a post against the Rams, and he was the center safety because he was at 11 yards, right? So there's times where their defense is just out of position as a whole, and I think when you run the football, it's going to only add people toward the line of scrimmage. And check this out. They don't have a guy that can cover A.J. Brown. They really don't. Trayvon Diggs is dangerous if you give him and put him in a position to touch the football, but just flat out cover somebody, he's not the best at it. Right? There's guys that he's accumulating so many yards with guys with he's just covering people. Right? So I think on the outside we have a clear advantage against Anthony Brown and Trayvon
Question
Diggs.
for both you guys: would you go heavy 11 or 12 tonight?
Pros and cons.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's why I asked it.
I will go 11 because I think our team is more comfortable in 11. I think it's our best personnel group.
They've been super heavy 11 this year.
Yep.
They're among the highest percentage 11 personnel offenses in the league. I think they're third or fourth in their percentage of offensive personnel.
Yeah.
The reason I say this is because where's the other threat? Right? Who's the 12 personnel besides Goddard?
It would be Stoll or
Stoll is a blocker, but he's
Right.
not a threat. Quiz is a
Right.
threat.
Yeah.
You know, Quiz is a threat. It's speed out there. And check this out. Speed trumps things for defenses. When they know you have a fast guy in a certain spot,
Right.
you have to call him out, even if he's a backup. When Greg Lewis got on the field, even though he was the 4th or 5th receiver, they would yell out speed, 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 right? In that position. That's just how it works. They give you that type of respect when you can run fast.
But Adam asked an interesting question, I think, because there's also the issue of left tackle. Can he endure the game? And then we've also seen at times, whether Jack Driscoll is at left tackle or even in the season opener, when they were anticipating and got a lot of 7-man pressure, cover zeros, that they will throw 12 personnel out there. And Adam, I mean, that this is sort of the reason why I would think Howie Roseman, knowing the injury that he has left tackle, did not trade Andre Dillard in the past when people have come calling, because he may have to play.
I mean, I remember the Panthers were really on him last season. Their line was terrible. They've actually added 4 new starters on their offensive line, but they're one of like 2 or 3 teams that call the Eagles. But they're really smart here. When you think they should trade someone, somebody gets hurt. That's when you don't want to have any regrets, particularly when you know you're a good football team.
Right.
Last year they were sort of in the playoff hunt. They weren't great. Obviously, they turned their season around when they were 2-5. They started getting on a win streak. But this year they're so good. To me, unless someone blows them away, I think Dillard's going to be here. And blowing them away would be, forget the 3rd round pick. Would you do it for a 2nd?
At this point, at this stage of the game, I'm probably going to hold on to Andre Dillard.
You're not going to do it for a 2, really?
2 is pretty
He's
tempting.
going
But
fast
like
and
if you're
gets the news for the second round.
If you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you're trying to be the best you can be right
true.
now.
Here's the other thing, Jeff. You know, to me, you can't talk about 11 or 12 personnel in a vacuum, because you have to think about the opponent you're playing.
Right.
Okay. The Cowboys have evolved with Cooper Rush into a team that essentially is not asking him to do too much.
Correct.
They want to run the ball. They've not run it probably as well as they want to, but they do have an explosive back in Pollard. At this point in his career, Elliott's much more of a grinder. Okay, he's not that guy anymore, but Pollard is the explosive back, so they play to their defense. So the question is, and I don't think the Eagles' offensive coaching staff are defensive offensive coaches, you know what I mean by that?
Sure.
But on the other hand, the last thing you want to do is turn the ball over and give them short fields and give them opportunities to play the way they want to play. Now, so that could mean 2 approaches. It could mean you come out and be really aggressive early with the idea that if, hey, we can get up 14-0, the Cowboys can't play the way they want to play.
Because Cooper Rush is the quarterback. Yeah.
Right. Or do we not come out conservative, but just make sure that we settle into the game so that nothing bad happens early, and all of a sudden they're up 10-0 because of what we've done.
Right. Now, I would say one thing on that. They've been super aggressive in the first half of games throwing the football.
Right.
In terms of their tempo, they're throwing a lot. They're amongst they're like top 5, top 7
I would think they
pass plays.
Just what I think we know, I think they'd more likely be aggressive.
Exactly.
I don't think they're going to be conservative. But I'm just saying there's 2 schools of thought.
Now, obviously, they've shown this ability. If it's not working, they'll run the football because they can, and they know they can with this line. And you can't worry about Maillat. Look, Maillat is playing. They must think he could do it, so he's got to go out there and do it.
Jay will tell you, if you're playing, you can't worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, he's playing.
Well, if you're playing, you're playing.
Right.
You know, that's just
The
about
game plan can't be, let's make sure that Mulata doesn't have a lot of struggles tonight.
I'll make sure the first 5 minutes.
Something interesting, when you talking about 12, they actually ran 13 personnel versus the Cardinals for an entire drive and moved it straight down the field. Right? So I was very perplexed by it, but I was like, it's working.
It's working.
You might as well do it. And they had easy throwing lanes.
They seem
so
to bring
it was something that, you know, that's going to come back at some point because of the success.
I was going to say, they seem to bring something out new every week on offense. It could be Calcaterra or 13 personnel. Just something new, which I like this about Steichen. And Kevin Patullo, I know it was in there helping, and obviously Steichen and Brian Johnson.
I always do wonder what teams are willing to do that's not per se their identity, but they are willing to do within a certain game because they think it's to their advantage. So Dallas does not blitz a whole lot. We just went 25%. So they do blitz, they just don't blitz a ton.
And
certainly
that could change.
Nothing like that. So that's what I was going to ask you guys.
Cause
if they watch the tape last week and they see that the Eagles' response to blitz is to throw screen, 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 and then I'm sure someone from their analytics department slides in front of them a sheet of paper that gives them Jalen Hurts' stats against the blitz, which is not nearly as good as when he's not blitzed. As a good coordinator, if you're Dan Quinn, do you think this is the game where I turn it up a little bit more because the numbers and what I just saw on tape last week tell me I may want to do that?
And it's interesting what you said, and I might disagree a little when you said you don't think Jalen Hurts, this is not a game for him to run. I think it will be for this reason.
For the blitz.
Number one, it could be blitz, and number two, because I think they're so long and athletic with their pass rushers, not just on the edge, but overall. You know, Parsons is 6'3". Lawrence is 6'3". I think Armstrong's
a big guy,
6'4". You know, even Dante Fowler, who's had a lot of good reps this year, people might forget he was the third pick in a draft. You know, in
Jacksonville.
So I mean, the way I see it, and maybe I'll be wrong, is I think that if Jalen sees color, he's going to break down and run. Okay. Now I'm not saying he will, but I think that he's getting better at that. But this could be the kind of game where, hey, he just sees a lot of color, a lot of great athletes, and he could start to pull it down and run.
And you're basing it off the Cardinals game where he saw color and began to move around a little bit more.
He still has that tendency.
He still has
I
that
think
tendency.
in his history,
I thought he was
times,
breaking it a little bit because in Detroit he didn't run as much as he could have run with as much pressure as he was getting. So, yes,
still a lot,
that's
like
a great
17
point.
or 18 times, though, is still a pretty big amount for a quarterback.
That's a great point.
All right, so I was mentioning Jalen Hurts against the blitz. According to PFF, he is blitzed on 31.4% of his dropbacks. That's 13th most in the NFL, so he's not blitzed a whole lot compared to some of the others. But his passer rating, and again, we can all debate PFF. I think when there's a big disparity, no matter what metric you're using, it raises a flag. His passer rating when blitzed goes from 112 to 66.
Oh, man.
So last week, though, to be fair, last week he was blitzed at a 50% clip. That's the most he had seen
which we were expecting
since the Lions.
Kind of new because of the opponent.
Right. And he had an 89.6 passer rating against the blitz compared to 93 when not. So he was very good. Again, screens, a lot of safe throws, fine.
I think they threw 12 or 13 screens last week.
That's a lot of screens.
I mean, counting both up to the back, to Goddard, the back, and wide receivers.
Right.
Now, this game you worry about is the game before the bye. Usually the players and the coaches are going to reevaluate to scout themselves. So after the bye, they'll have a plan for this going forward, right? Those numbers.
Right.
Before the bye, I don't necessarily know if they have the time to change it. Hopefully they put in some stuff, knowing that teams are seeing this film, looking at those numbers, and figuring out a plan against that. So I think that they're doing it, but it won't be as robust as it will be after the
question. As an ex-player, when you knew the bye was coming, was that in the back of your mind before the game, after the game, or are you able to block that out, or is it something consciously like, all right, man?
Sure, he doesn't want to miss his flight.
No, listen. I want to go to Acapulco or Puerto Rico or somewhere like that. I want to win this game so I can get the whole week off. So the only thing that you want to do is win this game because you know that the reward is getting the entire week. If you lose, you may have to stay there and practice.
If you lost, but Andy would kick you guys out though, right?
No, there's multiple years where we lost the bye and we had to be there at practice a few days that week.
Really?
Before we go. Yeah.
That was the vacation insurance.
So it's usually used as incentive to win that game.
You know? Honey, I'm not going to be in Acapulco for 3 days. You and the kids have fun.
We should have won.
All right, listen, you mentioned the abundance of screens. It was in double digits against Arizona. Nick Sirianni was asked this past week about the specific construct of the offense, especially against an aggressive blitzing defense. I thought he had some interesting things to say. So we're going to hear from the Eagles head coach right now on Jalen Hurts versus the blitz.
I would say, you know, it's been similar throughout the past year. You know, obviously we try to do our best as coaches to make it simple for him to look for things, and, you know, so he can go out there and execute and play. But, you know, I think it's pretty similar. You might give him one or two more checks or opportunities to, you know, maybe last year we built things in for him a little bit more, and now this year we're saying if you see this, get to that. And so there's definitely growth in it, but similar because it's similar. I think it's similar if you go back to when we had Phillip Rivers or Andrew Luck, or, like, you know, we don't try to put too much on these guys because we want them to be able to play fast and play free. And so it's the same thing. It's the same thing there. So you might have a little bit more here and there. But again, you got to be careful of that. You got to guard yourself on that when you're trying to let your quarterback, you know, try to put you in a perfect play at each time. Like, that doesn't work either. You know, sometimes when you do that, you get down to the 1 second on the play clock and you're clapping for the ball. So there's a balance in it, and he's definitely had some more growth with that. But again, we have to, you know, the more he can handle, the more we have to guard ourselves on how much you still give him.
All right, that was Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni kind of discussing how he equips Jalen Hurts and the offense against a team that is going to throw pressure at him. He talked about the number of screens because that's what he was asked about. Jay, I want to ask you what you make. He made the point that Jalen Hurts has a little bit more on his plate this year compared to last year, but their answer to heavy pressure is not necessarily sight adjustments, hot routes, all those things. It's to do less and have a simplified game plan, which we saw last week with the number of blitzes. Does that have to evolve, or is that the right way of going about it, regardless of your quarterback's experience?
You always want to evolve.
Okay.
Right? Just like Jalen Hurts is able to retain more information and be able to be a better quarterback because he's been in the offense a couple of years now. You want his blitz recognition and the plays that you're able to get to based on that level of maturity to expand as well. So you want to be able to counteract blitzes in multiple ways. That's sight adjustments, that's hot routes, that's having prepared plays prepared, that's also getting into the screen game. You want a smorgasbord of ways to pick up the blitz so you're not timed up. That's what this league is about. You can force people into these quick throws and tackle them before the first down, right? They still get off the field whether they complete the pass or not. So you want to be able to get to multiple different things, and you want your quarterback to be able to get you into better plays.
Do you think that there were, I don't want to say plays left on the field, because if it's a design screen, it's a design screen, but I think you mentioned that the Cardinals play a lot of zone behind their blitzing.
Right.
So do you think there probably would have been more opportunities to work that middle of the field more if they went with a different kind of attack?
Well, the other thing too about blitz is if you're anticipating it based on your opponent and you have the tendencies, the probabilities, you know all that stuff going in,
right,
then you're also calling plays that deal with it at times. So a screen is a no-read throw.
Sure.
I mean, it's a screen.
Right.
Just like a wide receiver screen is a no-read throw. So these are not reads.
Okay.
The issue becomes if you come to the line of scrimmage, regardless of what your play call is, and all of a sudden as a quarterback or the center, whatever, however you're handling it as an offense, quarterback should always have the last call, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But do you agree with that, by the way?
Yes, yes.
And you see something that you know based on the protection, because you know what the protection is, you just called the play, and you know that we can't handle that.
Right.
Okay, so either I've got to handle it by getting rid of the ball or by doing something else. Maybe in the case of a Jalen Hurts who's incredibly mobile, maybe he thinks, hey, I'm gonna beat the blitz by running now. That's possible too. Or you then have the ability to change the protection if you see something. Let's say to your right, you feel like it's an overload, our protection call can't handle it.
Right.
You can change the protection.
Which we don't see a lot. We see it occasionally, but not a lot of.
Right.
The blitz is not just for the offensive coordinator to take control of the game.
Right.
Your quarterback has to have more autonomy when there's blitz. And the best teams I've been on, and even when you look at the way that the NFL is structured now, when Aaron Rodgers had Devontae Adams, they would make it up, right? Travis Kelce and Mahomes, they had signals. There's times where they talk about it, I was like, let's do it, right? Because they talked about it. Hey, Donovan, when this occurs, I'm going to do this. That's the rapport that you have. And you only can do that with having trust with the quarterback, not taking away responsibility, but actually giving him more autonomy. And that's the way you do it. A.J. Brown, hey buddy, if they zero us, I'm doing this. And you better be there for me. Yeah, that's the way this works.
Would you like to have seen a little more A.J. Brown last week and maybe hoping today that...
That's why you see a lot of, the quarterback at the line of scrimmage, whatever he does, there's these little signals that everybody knows because you're getting a certain look.
Right.
And you want to do those as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Because remember, they have the ability to check. You also have a timer that's going off, right? Your play clock. So you want to do something so subtle and so quick, eye contact, something, little signal to get the play off and not alert the world that you're audible.
Right.
Right.
And don't forget too, there's also built-in route conversions where you don't necessarily need a signal. Like, let's say you have a certain play call, and then all of a sudden the ex-receiver has fresh man, and he hasn't played that way all game. Okay, and you're in the second quarter, and your film study said he doesn't normally play that way. You might have an automatic route conversion that doesn't need a whole deal with the quarterback doing 5 things, and
it's a hitch. But he's pressed. It's a go. Certain things and that's built into the play.
Yeah.
And you asked me something about A.J. Brown. Should we saw more of him? Down the field for sure. You cannot play a game against the Cardinals and not tack a team down the field.
Right.
In general, with this weaponry that we have, you got to take 4 or 5 shots.
They did very early, and then they stopped.
Yeah, it's like it disappeared
not
after
just
the
throwing
first
him the
years.
ball, but down the field.
Right.
Yeah. We want
I think they
that
go more
line.
intermediate when he caught the ball. So
Yeah,
I think
it
you'd
was more
say over the
I'm
top.
talking about down the field. You don't want to leave a game not having A.J. Brown to get some down the field targets.
And again, you think there will be opportunities for Brown today against Trayvon Diggs?
Yes, especially the only time I ever worry is when Malik Hooker's in the post. Sometimes, if he's getting his depth, he's historically known, came in this league as a ball hawk, and he was a first-round pick, and he still has that ability in him. He hadn't played much football because of injuries, so that can worry me at times. But if he's not in the post, and you can't play like that, you get a one-on-one, just throw it anyway.
Jaron Kearse just came back. Is he still covering tight ends?
Yeah, 27.
And he just came back from an MCL sprain. That dude is tall. He's like 6'4".
Yeah.
So that's a pretty interesting matchup if he's on
a
Goddard.
tight end matchup.
Yeah.
Well, tonight's matchup also features 2 really good players from the 2020 draft, or 2021 draft, where, what year is it? Yeah, 21 draft. Eagles obviously picked 10th overall. They took Devontae Smith, who's on his way to becoming a very, very good wide receiver in this league. And up next was Dallas, who at 11th overall took Micah Parsons out of Penn State. And he is already an excellent player in this league and on his way to maybe becoming a Hall of Famer. You said this, and I
That's who he is.
Is it a little too early? If he just a little too early?
He's in Dallas and he gets a lot of hype. But he's had a great few years. But Sean Marion did too.
The feedback we get is the best edge rusher in the NFL. And there are some really good ones, and I know we don't like to use the word best.
Is
Aaron
Von Miller
Donald is a
still
great
in this league?
interior rusher. What?
It's a 33, but yeah.
Von Miller's still in this league.
But I also want to give Dan Quinn credit the way he uses him, because not everyone saw him or had Dan Quinn's vision. Because people weren't sure, is he middle linebacker, is he DN? Greg, where are they lining him up?
Well, he does line up stacked, probably more than people think.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but he's a terrific edge rusher. I mean, he's a really good edge rusher because he's just so purely explosive, and he can change direction really, really well. But it depends on the game. I mean, there are games, if they're playing more, they don't really play base in a strict sense. They don't play with 3 linebackers because their base is really a big nickel, because Kearse, now that he's back, he's essentially their 3rd linebacker if they're going to play base. Mm-hmm. But if they play base, he's often a stack backer. It's when they do the other stuff that he's basically an edge player or a joker. He moves around, but he becomes a pass rusher.
Yeah. Now, he ended last week's game, I believe, with a strip sack on Stafford, right?
Yeah,
the Rams? Yeah. So that was his 6th sack of the year. So he leads the NFL with sacks. Well, he's tied with Max Crosby, Nick Bosa, and Matt Judon. 3rd in QB hits with 12, tied for 2nd in tackles for a loss. And that's a pretty good stat line, Jay. I know Von Miller's good too, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, no. I know that's your Penn State guy, and I'm not saying that.
If he went to Ohio State, I'd be like,
I'm not saying that he's not the up and coming star in the NFL. I'm just saying the Hall of Fame is a little bit of a stretch out of the second.
Would I make you feel better if I said Quiddy Pay before getting hurt was among the leaders in sacks? He was doing great. He was doing
The
good.
interesting thing becomes how often he lines up over Mailata.
Right.
Because he is so explosively quick, you need your arms. I mean, you can't let him get in, you just can't let him get into you.
Right.
You need your arms.
Is there something
And why
that you
wouldn't
think?
you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why
would
wouldn't you? You got
Absolutely,
Lane
yeah.
Johnson, who hadn't given up a sack in years now, and you
Lane
got
Johnson
Mailata
is
that's
really
hurt.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything that you think sets Hassan, we'll get to Hassan Reddick in a second, I promise you. Is there anything you think that sets Micah Parsons that stands out? You mentioned the change of direction, the length. I mean, people make the LT comparison. I get it. It's a little too early for that. But, like, is there something that just jumps out at you that he does so amazingly well?
Well, basically, I would say it's his explosiveness off the ball and then his ability to change direction. Because, if you just have one move, okay, no matter how good that move is in the NFL, eventually that move will get minimized.
Sure.
It might not get totally taken away, but it gets minimized. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
If you only have one thing.
Right. They will figure that thing
They'll
out.
figure it out. His ability to explode, whether it's inside or outside, and then change direction is really remarkable, because you're not talking about a 225-pound guy now. I mean, he's long and he's 245 pounds. Now, people might not be aware, when he came out of high school in Pennsylvania, he was recruited as an edge rusher.
Right.
He was not a linebacker in high school.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he sort of became both at Penn State, but more of a linebacker.
Sure.
And he rushed the quarterback, obviously, at times.
Right.
But
And not usually from the edges, though.
no,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah.
But he is really, and he's powerful.
I will say this, and to your point, I don't like to admit this about Penn State guys, but he's one of the best defensive talents that I've seen in my lifetime. He is.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that. Me saying that he's not a Hall of Famer yet has nothing to do with his play. It has to do with him being in his second year, and there's a lot that can go on in the National Football League.
The fascinating thing about what kind of player he is and how he's used is, Adam, when that draft happened, this is the year one of Nick Sirianni and John Gannon. We don't exactly know. We're told some of the things they want to do defensively. But you and I said there's no way the Eagles will draft Micah Parsons, because that's not the type of player that they ordinarily, that kind of pass rusher, a stand-up guy, a joker. They're more of a traditional, undersized. But here we are.
Greg, I know where he's going. I want to address that.
Here we are a year later, and one of their best defensive player this year, Hassan Reddick, at least from pass rushing standpoint, is a version of that guy. Not the same guy, but how they use him is that kind of guy.
Well, it's funny because the way these conversations go, they go, okay, let's just say, for instance, the Roseman and his group, whoever was there last year, liked him, right? So guys, he's here on our board. If he's there, we want him. How will you use him? Then it's a philosophical question.
Correct.
If you're not satisfied with the way they're going to use him, you can't draft him.
Right.
First thing I don't want.
Plus, the other factor is we now have access to the results, okay?
Yeah.
So everybody's a genius now. That's true. Including all of us. We're geniuses now. But the point is
I've been one, Greg.
Right, you've been one for a long time.
You used to be.
Yeah. But the point is that even though he showed pass rush ability at Penn State, my guess is there were very few people in the league in those meetings, that Adams, that everybody has, that thought he was this guy.
Right.
It'll be translate this
That's
way.
fair.
Right.
I mean, Greg,
no one was saying
to your point,
No one
pass
knew
rushers,
that. No.
Yeah.
pass rushers like DMs
only
or
got the
outside,
opportunity
they'll go
because
number
someone
one
got
if they're that
hurt.
good. He would have been the number one pick if
Owens
that
got
was
hurt,
the
and
case.
they needed someone.
Right.
So it's easy to
Say your
say
point
that
again,
now.
Joe.
But, and also, hey, let's not forget, he had a maturity issue.
True.
That was an issue that some people had. But I could tell you, it's just like with Justin Jefferson. There were people on Doug Peterson's staff who did not think Justin Jefferson could play on the outside.
Well, they're just
okay?
That's
Guess what?
Now that right there, I don't understand. I won't ever.
I'll never reveal who that person was.
I'm not defending anybody. I'm just saying that 104 of 111 targets his last year at LSU came out of the slot.
Whenever you get to a guy that runs 4.41, when you run
length?
With that length, that's not a slot. Now that's an offensive
We can do both.
structure that's
Right.
saying, look, we like to feature this guy more. When you run a 4.41, and you have the length that he has and the size that he has, he can play anywhere.
Sure.
That just doesn't, like, now, if that dude was 5'8",
yeah,
and he ran 4.41, that's a different story.
As someone in personnel told me, all the coaches would have had to do is look at Justin Jefferson's junior year tape to see that he did line up on the outside.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He didn't put up big numbers.
No, but you could see examples of him winning there.
Right.
Because he wasn't the number one guy. They still had Jamar Chase.
And the thing is not just about the 4.41 and his length. Justin Jefferson, to me, was so easy because he had the ability to make people move and change directions. The defensive player.
Right.
He can go up and make a guy shift left and shift right. That's the easiest thing to see for a receiver. Right. Not many can do that. When you find it, it's like 1 out of 50 receivers that can do it. When you find it, it's an easy thing to see.
Right. Well, the Eagles have A.J. Brown. They don't have to be hurt anymore. Yeah. Even though we're rehashing
they
don't have to feel hurt.
That's how they had to make up for it.
Just a quick question unrelated to this game, if I may ask. When you look at receivers coming out of college, do you think at all about where they're lined up, or do you just try to look at their traits?
Ooh. So I look at their traits, number one. Offense, like what they're playing in.
Right.
That's a big thing for me. Like how much, so a couple things, right? So their traits, how much man-to-man that they're getting.
Right.
Because that's the thing that's going to translate the best to me. What's the guy doing with a person in front?
Right.
So if I can get a guy that's seeing a bunch of man coverage, I know that he's going to have the mental reps and just the physical reps to be able to decipher and work his way through that, right? Because usually guys that get a lot of man coverage, they're going to be great versus man-to-man. Great versus man-to-man translating to the NFL.
Right. Yeah. Adam, we talked about Hassan Reddick filling that role now for the Eagles as a stand-up rusher. But ever since losing Derek Barnett, we've talked about Howie always looking at the market. Do you think they will wind up adding somebody? They did add a defensive end from the Vikings as a stand-up rusher, but he's now on injured reserve. It's an Janarius Robinson.
It was a guy who's a total project. You'd rather have on their practice squad anyway. I would say, because they lost Barnett, as you said, the three positions you have to look at here are edge rusher, however you want to look at that. I'm still going to say third outside corner because, again, we said this last year, if Sanders got hurt. What's your answer if one of the two starting outside corners gets hurt?
Right.
They got lucky last year. Remember, we'd say it every week. Again, no one got hurt, thankfully for them.
Mm-hmm.
But are you really going to go with this kid?
Right.
You're going to go with Zach McPherson?
Well, as of right now, they have to.
Right now, they have to. That's their answer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good enough.
Getting back to protecting the quarterback, Greg, I want to ask you, Kenneth Gainwell, how does he look to you in pass protection when asked to? And is this a concern if Dallas decides to send him one extra guy?
You know, I'm going to struggle to answer that. You might have a better answer, but it seems to me he's not used a whole lot in that regard.
Not a lot, but I thought I saw some examples of where he got confused on.
Yeah, I mean
where to be.
Yeah.
So if you're Dallas and you already move a lot of guys around, I mean, does this become a, you got the line, got to communicate, and the protection has to be communicated.
So the question is, number one, does he get a lot of snaps tonight?
Right.
Which he may or may not, if that's a concern on the Eagles. And
by the way, Miles Sanders isn't great at it either.
Right,
so I mean, I think in general that's a concern.
Boston Scott's back, so he could,
And that is a big question for sure, because you have to decide philosophically when you get into 3rd and 8 how you want to play.
Right.
Do you want to get 5 out and just figure? Almost going back to my point, which might be true or not true, that we've got Jalen Hurts, and if there is a pass rush, maybe he can make a play against the pass rush.
Yeah.
Do we still want to get 5 out?
Right.
Because every offensive coach wants to get 5 out.
Yes.
That's just the reality of life.
That's the reality.
Although, Jay, Jay mentioned it, this staff has, I feel like we've seen that from Andy and Doug, the whole stubborn 5 out, 5 got a block. But you mentioned this team looks a little bit more adaptable at times than prior regimes as far as protection.
Well, just before Jay answers that, that's also a down and distance play call situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 1st and 10, if you want to call a shot play, everybody protects with 7. I think on 3rd downs, most coaches want to get 5 out.
Of course.
They don't want to get stuck sending 3 out and having 2 that have to protect.
Right.
Now, you have to do that if you can't protect because you don't have a pass game if you can't protect.
Sure.
Andy didn't believe that, though.
Yeah, that's true. There are a couple of games where
no, just to get back to your original point, no one is thinking that Gainwell is a great pass protector. Right. They're not putting him in situations, and he's a tail as of now to a defense. Okay. There are certain positions that guys are in that if you see Quez in a crack split and there's 2 receivers out there, that's a tail that they're going deep.
Right.
There's a tail if Gainwell's in a game in a situation that he's not going to be one of your guys that's going to be pass protecting, right? He's in a game for a situation. It's a tail for the defense. So we have to groom Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, whoever it is, to be able to do both, or Gainwell. But he has to get better at it if we want to become flexible.
And the other question is, if it's 3rd and 9, Jeff, do you really want Dallas Goedert as a primary pass protector?
Oh, I would think not.
Or have him out in a route.
Yeah. Now, again, like I said, if you're just getting killed because the pass rush is killing you, then that changes your approach. But I don't think they're going into the game with the idea that Dallas Goedert's going to be a primary pass protector on 3rd down.
I do want to add this. A former head coach that Greg and I knew, texted me yesterday, just random notes because he went for the Eagles and Dallas tape, all of it, both teams. He said, Philly's going to have a problem on 3rd and long with the running back. He goes, none of them can protect. This guy
and
is pretty sharp. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
And he goes, this is a problem. So I said, what would you do? And he goes, first of all, Goddard can block. And he goes, that's one thing that they have at their disposal, but you have to make a decision, as Greg was talking about. Are you going to have him in or out? And then are you going to play heavy 12? He goes, these coaches don't believe that. That's what the tape showed.
Right. Go ahead. There's times with other coaching staffs, if you don't have a great runner, a tight end can supplement for that, where you can see some Jack Stoll, but I don't necessarily know if we have the NFL experience with this coaching staff to put a tight end back in a fullback position or
playing F.
Yeah, to be able to pick up some pass protection, things like that, which is a less man out. We haven't seen it, so those are options that can occur, but because all of these positions are interchangeable.
The other issue is, and if you feel that your O-line can protect, you can go empty. Because empty also, and if you want to spread empty a little bit, then the defense has to react to that. If you decide you want to go empty and put Dallas Goedert number 1 to trips, and they want to play man, someone's got to go out and cover Dallas Goedert.
Right. This wouldn't be a bad game for empty.
Right.
This wouldn't be a bad game at all.
Well, if you're trusting the health of your offensive line.
It wouldn't be a bad game at all.
We'll go tempo with it.
There's only a few things that you can do in empty. There's only two things that teams really do. The number one thing is to blitz it because there's nobody to protect, right? To blitz it, get in the A-gaps and kind of get there quick. But for these guys that have so many people toward the line of scrimmage, it makes it so much easier. You don't have to think that much now. Right. And they have to line up. They can't do all of this stuff now because you're spread.
Jason, were there some games, just one thing, were there some games with Andy where he would say, okay, guys, this is what the tape looks like. We're going to have to go faster this week with tempo?
Yeah, that was always built into the game plan. Like, we knew that we would go tempo. And the way we would go tempo a lot of times is to do plays that we already knew. Usually they would be 2-minute plays that we can get to really fast. We just didn't call it 2-minute drill. It was just tempo offense, but it was basically our 2-minute plays.
Gotcha.
Right.
And every team can get to that anytime that they want to. Chip had a way of getting to it. He would just call it like Monday. He would say Gruden. And Gruden meant Monday Night Football, MNF, and it would be Mucho Nitro Fat. So I still remember all these plays, right? It was 2 runs in the pass, and it was how fast you can run it. And we had plays like that. It was like 4 or 5 plays in a row that we can get
That's
to.
Hilarious.
So there's ways you can get to it as coach staff.
All right, we will continue this conversation in a second. We're going to pause real quick to hear a word
right now
from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And big thanks to our friends at Sky Motor Cars. If you hop out and go see them in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. If not, just visit them at SkyMotorCars.com. I want to get back to the idea of taking a few shots against Trayvon Diggs. He's got 2 interceptions this year, but we've all seen that in certain situations he can get jumpy, he can get itchy, so you can catch him. Dallas has only allowed 4 passing touchdowns this year. 3 of them have been for 10 yards or fewer. So I'm sure everybody goes into the game thinking, I got to take at least a couple of shots on Trayvon Diggs, and it doesn't seem like they have the opportunities. What have you seen there, Greg, as far as why they're so good in pass defense? Is it just the amoeba front and the pressure?
No, it's not just. I mean, I don't know how Jay thinks, but I actually think Anthony Brown has had maybe his best season. He's been very up and down in his career in Dallas.
Yeah, they picked on him a lot last year.
He's been picked on at times throughout his career.
Yeah.
And there have been times people wanted him out of Dallas, said he's just not good enough. I actually think he's played well this year. You know, relative to what, I mean, I'm not suggesting he's the best corner in the league, but I think he's played better. I also think that the less man and the more cover 2 and the more disguise and late movement has helped a lot.
Sure.
You know, Dan Quinn to me, and I've talked to him over the years, I wouldn't say I know him well, but I've talked to him. I think that Dan Quinn has done such an incredible job of evolving as a defensive coach. Because don't forget, he was the original Legion of Boom guy.
Right.
That was all cover 3, where you pretty much lined up in cover 3 all the time because your talent was just superior to who you were playing against. And they almost had to line up in cover 3 because Cam Chancellor is not a post safety.
Right.
And Earl Thomas was the best post safety in the NFL.
Right.
So, you know, he's evolved to becoming a man guy. Now, instead of just doing the same thing he did a year ago, he's evolving with more disguise, late movement, and playing cover 2 and more zone.
Right.
So I think that also helps a lot because it makes the offense have to think more. It's not just so easy, hey, let's come out and do this now against Dallas because this is what we know we're going to get. Now you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
And it's hard to recognize, too, because there's times where they're in man-to-man, but it looks like cover 3 because they don't always do it from press.
Right.
Right? So there's just like little nuances and tweaks. But am I going after Trayvon Diggs? And I'm saying I'm going after him.
Right.
Just because I think he's an undisciplined football player. And team, he may get you. He may get you. But what I would tell A.J. Brown, hey, man, I'm going to give you shots. Whenever I get a chance, I'm going to give you a shot. Just don't let him intercept the ball.
See, here's what I mean, just a play that I would throw in somewhere is if Diggs is playing off, okay, and he will. I mean, he's not pressed. No one presses every play. I would do a slant and go, sluggo, because he likes to jump routes.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether it's an out and go or a sluggo, I mean, I would do something that gets him to jump.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He
I remember real quick, teams used to do that at the Derby when he was an Eagle. They would hit him with a few slants early.
He had slow
and
eyes.
late,
That was
hit
the
him with
knock
the
on him.
sluggo.
Yeah, and he's not Asante, like Trayvon is not Asante savvy.
Okay.
Asante had his stuff down where very rarely was Asante getting run by.
Right.
And he was just as opportunistic as Trayvon.
He was savant with that.
But he was
He's
way
able to-
better
Right.
because Asante had this rule, and this is just good stuff. Asante
I
had
can't wait
this
to hear this.
rule when it came to quarterbacks and double moves.
Uh-huh.
If the quarterback didn't show the whole ball and it was just this, he would never go for it. The ball had to be with one hand.
Right. That's great.
Right there. He was like, dude, this here is
That's
never
what I
going
mean.
to get me.
Wow.
This here, and you hold it, he's like, the only person that can do it is freaking Roethlisberger. He's like,
Right.
the only one that can
hands
have
are
it
about
this,
the
and he's
size
like,
of
it's
this
so
table.
big,
Yeah.
and he can do it. And he's like, he would get me. But if it wasn't, this little shoulder shimmy thing that they teach is like, I'm never going for it.
Right. Well, you know what? I bet you A.J. Brown is salivating for a couple of reasons. One, to take some shots, but 2, the man has not yet played Dallas Cowboys in his career.
Really?
This will be A.J. Brown's
Really?
debut
Oh, he's about to kill
against
them
the
tonight.
Dallas. How fired up do you think he is for this game on Sunday?
That might be your player of the game, I'm thinking.
Let's go.
All right, we're going to take another quick break as we end hour 1 of the Inside the Birds pregame live, and we're going to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook here in Philadelphia. And as you can see, we got a jam-packed casino. People watching some games, watching the pregame show. We have a few people taking in the pregame show. And of course, the great
Thank you.
service
Hi,
that
how
we
are you?
always get
Thank you.
when we come to Jack's Bar and Grill. This is Danielle, correct, by your name tag? Danielle, who's winning tonight, Danielle?
Eagles.
All right, there you have it. Danielle says the Eagles win tonight. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for the delivery.
Danielle.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks.
it.
In her Wentz jersey. Uh-oh.
No, it's an AJ Brown jersey.
That's
Put
it.
the duct-
Change the
put the
name.
duct
Take the,
tape.
yeah, the
Just
name.
like 81 is an Avant
Right,
jersey.
right.
You just put the
Yeah,
tape over.
just put the duct tape on it.
Who were
baby.
other 81s? Don Zimmerman, though. He might have been 80.
Matthews. Jordan Matthews, 81.
Jordan Matthews, yeah.
Jordan Matthews was LJ Smith. He was 84.
He was
right?
82.
Oh,
82, 82, yep,
That's right.
yep.
That's right.
LJ was 82.
What was Billy McMullen? 80?
Yes, good call by you.
All right,
How do you know that?
I don't do much outside of watching
Mr. Training
football.
Camp, Billy McMullen.
Billy wasn't 80 though.
You need to get
I
out
said
more.
80.
80, no. Wasn't that Thrash's number?
Oh, that was James Thrash, yes.
Yeah, he was 80.
I thought Billy came after Thrash, though.
He did.
Did he not?
Oh, yeah, he did way after. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, a couple of years after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Either way.
He's worked for the NFL office for years.
G. Lou was 83. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep. All
The
right.
basket catch, 84, baby.
Hank Basket, 84. That's right. That's right.
Another training camp warrior.
What was Matt Schobel? I want to say
88.
Show.
88.
Oh, was it 80? I thought it was 85.
She's talking about the funniest dude in the history of the Eagles.
He was?
Matt Schobel.
Matt
Was he
Schobel?
really?
All right, now you have to say why.
Uh-oh.
Schobel was
I'll
just-
tack 20 extra minutes onto the show.
If
to
I'm
now
right,
I got
you owe
why
me
Matt
$1.
Schobel won.
No, Schobel was just funny. Like, he just was that dude. He was just like the quintessential backup, like tight end.
Okay.
Like, he didn't really care if he got the ball much at all or anything like that. Like, he just, he was just alone for the
Glad
ride.
he didn't care about getting the ball much because he didn't.
He was alone for the ride, baby.
I remember every year the Eagles would sign a tight end like that to back up Brent Selleck.
Yeah.
And every year we'd all think, oh, maybe they're going to play more 12 personnel this year because they always signed a pass-catching tight end. And nope, they would always be 11 personnel.
Yeah, no chance.
All right, well, if you're coming into Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, you can place a wager on the Eagles to win. They are favored yet again. They are favored for the 6th time this year in 6 games, 6.5-point favorites. Or you can place a bet on the Bet Rivers app. Adam, when do you think the Eagles will not be favored? That, knowing what their schedule looks like, when's the first game they're not going to be favored?
I would say at Dallas. What is it, week 12, something like that?
God,
Yeah.
Well, I guess we have to
Potentially,
see how they
what
do.
happens? No,
They're
no,
all
that's
these games
what I'm going to get to.
Packers
No.
lost today.
But even if they were to lose, Greg, I mean,
No, I'm saying Dallas.
whatever
I'm
in
talking
one
Dallas.
team is still
I'm
going to be
just saying,
favored.
I'm looking through
Yeah.
the schedule and trying to find teams.
Of course,
that's
depending
where
on what
they're
they do leading up to it. No, that's
So
right.
they got
But
the bye week,
amazing.
then Pittsburgh here, which they will
Favorites.
likely be favorites for no matter what
They will
happens
be.
tonight.
oh, big favorite.
And
against
then is
Pittsburgh.
it Houston Thursday night right after that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Going to be favored in that game no matter what. So it might
Yeah,
be
Cowboys.
quite a while, right? All right.
Yet they were an underdog in every playoff game the Super Bowl year.
Unbelievable, right?
How does that happen?
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the unknown, unsung hero here for the Dallas Cowboys, and that's Cooper Rush. I know a lot of people felt that when Dak Prescott went out week 1 with the thumb injury that the Cowboys were done. That's it. Goodbye. And here they are. They've won 4 straight. This is what's interesting. They've won 4 straight despite the fact that Cooper Rush has only thrown more than 1 touchdown once, and he's not passed for more than 235 yards in a game. Now, Greg, you talked about that earlier.
Well, he hasn't
They don't
turned it
ask him
over.
to do a whole lot.
He hasn't turned it over.
And he hasn't turned it over. He's the only quarterback in the NFL who entered this week with over 111 pass attempts and no interceptions. So do you just see a guy who's very careful with the football? It's hard to be that. 111 pass attempts and no interceptions.
16 attempts last week. I mean, when is that going to
Well,
happen?
that's rare, though. It's not like he's only
They
been
got a-
15,
They
16
got a
attempts.
kick block and a
Yeah. I mean, I would say that watching his tape, there are certain things I like about him. You know, I mean, he's tough in the pocket. He will stand and deliver the ball when he needs to do that. You know, he doesn't shy away from throwing the ball when he needs to. He's made some good throws, obviously, in this 4-game stretch. You can't say he's not done anything, but clearly they're not looking for him to be the guy that drives the bus.
Right.
I mean, I'm fascinated by all these conversations about, because they won 4 in a row, that he should now be the quarterback.
Right.
You know, which is just ridiculous.
Hey, you could thank the owner for that. That was
Yeah, it's just,
Jerry started it. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's just ridiculous.
Right.
But the point is that their defense has played exceptionally well. They've gotten some explosive runs from Pollard. There's no question Rush has made some 3rd down throws at times. But, you know, it's that old formula that can win some games in the league of let's run the ball, let's play really good defense.
Right.
If our quarterback doesn't turn it over, we've got a shot every week.
Which he's done a great job of.
Which he's done a great job of. And then you get into all the other areas in a given game. You know, there's a lot of teams that sort of play that way until you get into a game that doesn't go that way.
Right.
Like a perfect example, just so people can understand, is what happened with the San Francisco 49ers today. You know, they kind of play a similar way. And then somehow a game just gets away from you a little bit.
Sure.
And then can you play in what that game requires?
Right.
Or the Eagles in the playoffs last year versus the Bucks.
Correct.
You want to run the ball.
Right.
You get down and you got
Right.
to start passing it.
Right.
You're not
Well,
you're built for it.
And they've also got, you know, their left tackle is a rookie. Okay.
Yes.
And he's
We need to get into that too.
Okay.
Well, Tyler,
I'll just set it up then when
Yes,
you get into it when
please
you want to
do.
get into
Yeah.
it. But that could be a little bit of an issue.
Sure.
It has been at times.
Okay.
As far as them, their formula is to run the ball. They're averaging 30 yards per, like game as far as not 30 yards, but 30 rushing attempts per game since he's been in there. Right? They're asking him to throw the ball 25 times a game.
25 and a half. You know what's crazy? In his first start ever, he threw the ball 42 times against Minnesota.
You mean last year?
Yeah, last year. And, which
And he
is
did
interesting.
okay.
He did very well.
Yeah,
Actually, I
yeah,
talked to the Vikings about that. They couldn't, in fact, when they pressured him, he just got rid of the football. He defeated whatever their game plan was, they got it out of his hands quickly so it didn't get the pass rush.
Yeah.
So-
So when you consider they're asking them to do the same.
This year
thing
they're not doing
every day.
anything,
They're offensively they're not scary at all. I don't think that they have a true number one receiver on their team. And
You
that's
don't
just
view Lamb that way?
No. No chance.
Now, let me ask you, just out of curiosity, because I go back and forth when I watch tape of Lamb in my mind, and sometimes I think, oh yeah, he's really good, and other times I think, yeah, he's good, but he's not that guy.
Yeah.
What do you think of him?
I like him as a player, but I think that he's more of a slot guy that's going to be a predominant. I think he can be a guy that you can play through like an Edelman, but he's not going to be like just an outside number one where you're going to beat him down. He's going to win down the field much.
Right.
Can he make a great play in a tight situation on a fade route in the red zone? Yeah, he can do that. But if you just ask him to line up and beat someone one-on-one, a model, he's not going to do that consistently.
Okay.
Enough to be number one. A.J. Brown's going to win that matchup 90% of the time.
Right.
He's going to win that matchup 60, 70% of the time. That disqualifies you from
I
being
had a
number one.
person to try to explain and say he can beat man coverage, but you're not going to see a lot of separation at the top of the route from CeeDee Lamb, and they don't use him that way, so maybe there's an example of that as well, but he wasn't that guy at Oklahoma either, like kind of a long strider,
He was very good run after catch. That's what a lot of people spoke to when he came out, that he's really good run after catch, which is a whole different trait.
Right.
You know who we would thrive with or be a lot better player with? Aaron Rodgers. Because Aaron Rodgers can make a guy like him look so much better because of ball placement. Because he's not going to get a ton of separation at the top of routes because he doesn't run as well as the top echelon guys do, right? Those upper are low 4.4s, 4.3 guys that can get a large amount of separation. He's a 4.5 mid guy. Right? So when you consider that, he's not going to be able to run away from everyone. So he needs ball placement. He can make a tough catch, but he needs ball placement. He's dropped a lot this year, though.
And Gallup is just coming back last couple weeks off his ACL injury because he was the guy before the injury. He could run. And he's got size.
Gallup is a guy who separates well at the top of the route.
He was their boundary X, which tells you a lot because he's that guy. And I remember watching Gallup coming out of Colorado State, and I really liked him. I mean, I remember looking back at my notes and saying that I thought he could be a 1 or a 1.8 type receiver in the league.
Right.
And he's much more of a vertical dimension than Lamb is.
Yeah, and when he says boundary X, and it's so funny every time you say that, it just takes me back in the film as black and white, and it's Walsh from the 49ers. The guy that was opposite of Jerry had to be able to run fast and take the top off the defense. You know, Taylor, even in our offense, Todd Pinkston can run. If I say anything else about him, Todd Pinkston can run with T.O. and those guys. Like, that guy has to be able to run extremely fast, and Gallup is the quintessential X receiver.
He can get vertical.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about the X receiver is, and not, as we know, nothing's 100%, but particularly with more teams playing split safety, if you go line up in a 3-by-1 set, 3 receivers to the field, the 1 receiver to the boundary, that's the boundary X, very often, in split safety, especially if it has a quarters element to it, that boundary safety's eyes go to the trip side.
Right.
So that boundary X receiver gets one-on-one coverage.
Right.
So if he can work outside the numbers, basically to the boundary, he's working one-on-one. Those guys have to win one-on-one. Now you can win multiple ways. You can win separation. A guy like DeAndre Hopkins can win just body presence, and because he's got mitts that catches everything.
Oh, he does.
Right. But I mean, you have to be able to win one-on-one if you're the boundary X.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, let's get into a little bit about the Eagles' pass defense and what they're going to do against this Dallas offense. There was a stat that I saw this week that, I had to almost double look at. The Eagles are number 1 in the NFL in yards per pass allowed at 4.96. They allow 4.96 yards per pass. That's the best in the league. Of course, it's only 6 games.
So that's yards per attempt.
I'm sorry, yards allowed per attempt.
Got it.
Correct.
That's phenomenal.
Interesting. That's interesting.
When you say
too. I wouldn't
phenomenal,
believe that.
not since 2009, which is 13 years ago, has a team even averaged less than 5 yards per attempt
that's
allowed.
phenomenal.
And that would be the Jets in 2009, and a guy I'm going to say a guy named Darrell Revis had a lot to do with that.
That was the year. That was Sanchez's first year when they went to the playoffs.
That's correct.
And they led the league in like every defensive
That was
category.
That was Hod, the quarterback, Sanchez.
That's right. That was
run the football.
That was the true case. They were number 1 in rushing, and they were number 1 in defense.
Yes.
That was cool.
That's where the term came.
Right. That was the classic. Let's hide the quarterback.
Yes, it was. It was.
Yeah.
That's all for Jaws and Greg used to talk about that when we watched tape.
But,
used to kill me. Sorry.
No, that's good. Just 13 years later, with more passing, the rules even favoring passing game more for the Eagles to be holding opponents under 5 yards in a pass attempt.
It's unbelievable.
Today's and that probably won't hold up, to be honest.
And isn't it amazing? Because
that won't hold up.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because a year ago at this time, Gannon
Oh
was
my
the
God.
biggest idiot we'd ever seen.
He looked. That was the Greg. That was the problem. They were giving up
I don't
everything.
necessarily know. You know what I'm saying.
He's not going to get on your side with that.
But yes, no, he's right. I don't necessarily know if that's been dispelled.
Isn't it amazing though when you get good players, how much better your defense is? It's just funny how that works.
Well, first of all, again, we don't need to go back to last year, but the guy was a first-year coordinator without a ton of talent. And he was just trying to get through by not giving up big plays.
Right.
And we know what the result was.
Yeah.
You gave up too many little plays because you can't give up 80% completions no matter how you choose to play defense.
Yeah. Right.
We know that. But, I think there's a reason that if you talk to people around the league that Gannon is a pretty respected guy, and he's not stupid.
Right. No, he's not. He's not. And he's the guys that he has now, that he have on his back end, seen a lot of football.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point.
They've seen a lot of football, from Coleman to Slay, Bradbury, Avante Maddox. They've seen a lot now. So those guys are going to be near the ball.
Gardner Johnson.
And all you have to do is just be near the ball.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
I say Coleman. I mean Gardner Johnson.
Let's flash back a little bit to last week, because the Cardinals were able to move the ball through the air better than other teams who have faced the Eagles. Or they actually averaged about 5.8 yards per attempt through the air, which is higher than what the Eagles
But still
have been allowing.
ridiculously low,
Which is
by
still
the way.
good, yeah. I was going to say that
Hollywood
was
got
still good.
loose a little bit. Hollywood Brown did get some plays.
Yeah, 5.6 yards, what I meant. John Gannon did get a little bit of criticism for soft coverage at times.
Kyler Murray effect.
We know that when you do something well in the league, though, the opponents are going to, your tape lines up and opponents find more ways to combat what you do well. What did the Cardinals do well, Jason, last week to combat what the Eagles did?
To me, it was just the Kyler Murray effect of the game. He is a jitterbug. He did hurt them later in the game with movement. So you start to bring guys up when he starts to approach the line of scrimmage or show threat. And then there was guys out of position just because of who you were playing, right? I've never seen T.J. Edwards make mistakes on the football field. I saw him make a few mistakes this past week in coverage because of the quarterback, right? Being in a different spot. And when he would approach the line of scrimmage or the threat of Kyler Murray would bring a guy up, which leaves less of, less guys to cover in the back end. So I don't equate that to that transferring to the next game because we're playing Cooper Rush.
And also, he had the Brown 25-yard touchdown, which you could easily make the argument that he should have been tackled for an 8 or 9 yard gain.
Yes.
My favorite player there, Gardner Johnson.
Yeah, I mean,
you could also make the argument he should have caught another touchdown later in the game that fell off of his hands.
Yes.
Are you seeing? Did the Cardinals do it? We talked about the matchup zone that the Eagles have been playing.
Right.
And how it was effective week 2, 3, 4. And really, week 3 is when they started, I think, Washington, when we really started to talk about it. Are there any adjustments that you're seeing to try to combat what they do in that zone?
You mean opponents?
As far as maybe
against
flooding
Eagles?
one side with the receivers or route concepts to be a little more confusing?
Well, the Cardinals. I don't know what to make of the Cardinals, so I don't know.
I remember you saying that
Don't
last
get
week.
him real off. Please don't get him started.
I don't know how to
It
answer.
isn't
I don't know how to
real.
answer that in relation to the
You
Cardinals.
mean the offense, right?
The offense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the offense is not
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
They threw the ball at the line of scrimmage
Yeah.
a good 15 times.
Yeah. But I mean, there are ways. I mean, really good coordinator. Look, Kellen Moore's been doing this a while. People have different views of Kellen Moore. Cooper Rush is, somewhat limited, but obviously, no matter who your quarterback is, if you design good concepts that can beat coverage, then your quarterback has to make throws. You're an NFL quarterback. Yeah, I mean, are there ways to attack split safety zone? Of course. Every coach in the league knows this. This is not a scoop of how you go about attacking coverages.
Right.
I mean, every coach that comes up with a coverage, and I was very fortunate to sit with a coordinator named Rod Rust, who passed away about 5 or 6 years ago, and he was in the league for years and years, and
Great
was highly
man.
respected
Yeah.
when he was in the league. He said the first thing you have to do as a coordinator, whenever you put together any kind of zone, is you have to understand what beats it. Not just say, okay, this is my zone, here's how we're going to play it,
Right.
because you have to know what beats it. And if you don't know what beats it, then you can't be a good coordinator.
Yep.
Because teams are going to beat it.
Right.
So
And the players need to know
Right.
where their weaknesses are, because if you have smart players like we do, even when you throw a bad coverage out there against what they have,
Right.
the players can make up for it if they know.
Right.
And hey, this is where we're weak, right? We're in cover 3. You're going to be weak in the seam area. Guys will start to overlap it on the outside, stuff like that.
everybody runs in this league now what we call flood. It's a 3-level stretch.
Yep.
It's a great concept to run against cover 3 or cover 4, okay? Or, quarter, split safety.
Right.
Now, defenses know this. So do they get beat at times on it? Of course they do, because offenses do such a good job of how they get to it with different formations, different people, of putting a guy in conflict and he gets kind of caught and he's uncertain, but everybody knows how to beat it. It's just as a defense, then you have to then know how you're going to counteract it.
Right.
This past week with the Cardinals, a few times in coverage, more than a few times, Kaiser White was the person that was responsible for Kyler Murray.
Right.
In a normal situation, he's an extra man
Yep.
there that they can pass people off to. Now you take him out of coverage and have him close to the line of scrimmage. When he rolls or he, rocks or whatever it is, he has to step up. That guy jitterbugs a little bit and throws right behind him. That's going to happen when you're playing against a guy like Kyler Murray. It's still sound defense. It's just that it's this particular player that's playing off time.
All right. So
It's a numbers game. Just think of it this way, Jeff. Football is really a numbers game when you get it right. It's a numbers and space game. That's what football is. So Jay just made a great point. If you take a player out of coverage for Kyler Murray, which you're not going to do against Cooper Rush, obviously,
Yep. Right.
but if you take a player out of coverage for Kyler Murray, all of a sudden you're a little limited. So if you want to play, let's say, cover 3, but you're taking a player out of coverage, then instead of 4 under, 3 deep, you've got 3 under and 3 deep. So now there's more space because you have one less body playing underneath. So it's a numbers and space game.
Yep.
So our viewers will want to know, against a guy like Cooper Rush and what Dallas does offensively, and of course week to week teams do things, but organically, how do they match up against the Eagles' pass defense? What would be the kind of the identity of the Eagles' pass defense tonight? Or what do they have to watch for? Will Dallas learn a lot of rub routes? Will they run a lot of crossing routes? Are they going to run some of those high-low concepts you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely, and they'll run crossers. They run a lot of crossers. I think there'll be a lot of motion personally. Again, depending on how the Eagles play, if they're going to play a lot of man, we'll see how they react to the motion. If they're going to play a lot of zone, that's a different animal.
Right.
So because passing strength is a relative term when you're playing split safety zone.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to change anything. You can, but you don't necessarily have to. But Jay could probably answer that even better than I could.
Chauncey, Marcus Epps, you mentioned TJ Edwards, Avante Maddox come back tonight. We'll see how he manages with the ankle. But I mean, are those guys the ones that it's where it starts with the secondary tonight?
Where it starts with, no, I think it starts with the front.
Well, I got you. We're going to get to the front.
So, yeah, we'll talk front. But I think that based on what this team does offensively, I don't think that it's going to be a challenging defensive scheme in order to counteract. I don't think that Kellen Moore is winning, like an award this year for offense, because they're not manufacturing much on offense, right? It's not a hard scheme to pick up. It's a few motions, it's some crossing routes, it's some one-on-ones on the outside. They're not asking the guy to do much, right? So with that being said, I don't think that this is a hard team for our defense in the secondary to play. And I don't think that their personnel is as good as the teams that we have played. So with all those things, I think it's up to the front in order to stop the run. You want this team to pass. If we're going into the end of this game, fourth quarter, and we're saying this team is passing the ball, that's a win for us.
I'm making him a passer.
Whatever we need to do in order to make them rely on Cooper Rush and this set of receivers, Noah Brown, Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb, I don't believe that they're at the upper echelons of the talent in the NFL.
If the pass attempt totals in the high 30s, Eagles are probably winning and probably winning big. That means they're throwing from behind, and that's not what they want with Cooper Rush.
Exactly.
Noah Brown, by the way, been a nice little story for them this year.
Noah Brown, it's funny you say that.
Ohio State, right?
He is Ohio State.
Never mind. Let's go on to
I actually thought he was a big time recruit, okay? And for whatever reason, he never became one of those receivers at Ohio State.
Was he one of those guys just stuck behind too many other really good guys?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you're good enough, you're not stuck behind, so maybe he wasn't quite that guy. But he's physical, he's big. I wouldn't say he runs really well, but it's not like he's slow.
No, he runs good.
Yeah, he runs, and he's actually made some plays for them this year because Gallup was out. Now his targets and his production's going to go down when Gallup's back. But Brown is also an interesting guy because he is kind of their motion move guy to block in the run game, and you got to be careful with that because then if they want to go play action off that, you got to be careful because he kind of semi-inserts into the formation and you can kind of lose him.
He's passable for us, but can run better.
Okay, cool. Good stuff. All right, people always ask me and Adam all the time, we love Inside the Birds. It's great content. You got great visual graphics, and you really bring it to light. And that's what they always say, how can we do that? And I say, if you got content that people want, that's great. But you have to be able to present it, to enhance it. You need stuff that, Adam and I just can't do. You need the team of Rebel Hill Productions and Public Square Media. That's Zach and Jim. They do a great job of bringing Inside the Birds to life in front of your very eyes. They're always on par. So you got to reach out to them if you want to bring your webcast, your video, your podcast, whatever it is. They will take controls and bring it. Just make it magically happen the way this show does, because it's just us talking. It's those guys who are presenting the overlays, the videos, the graphics that you see. So we thank them so much. Again, it's Public Square and Rebel Hill. You can contact either of them to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, or anything you can dream of. Our commercials, they bring it to life. So we thank Public Square and Rebel Hill for doing an excellent job. We also want to bring attention to our friends at PHL Sports Nation.com. They are enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com. You can find them on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. Let's get into some of the trench talk. I like to do that on this show. Both teams, we've talked a little about the Eagles' offensive line, what's going on at left tackle. Dallas had some left tackle issues way before the Eagles did when Tyron Smith, their all-pro, was out for the year pretty early. They had to then rely heavily, Greg, on their rookie, Tyler Smith, who I know you want to talk about that. But it is interesting that Cooper Rush has only been sacked 7 times in 5 starts. So
which is
must be doing a pretty decent
Rush
job.
does a good job with, by the way.
Yeah, avoiding sacks
Rush
and getting it out.
Get rid of the ball. He doesn't hold the ball.
Right.
It's almost like he knows what he is.
Right.
Which, by the way, all quarterbacks should.
Yeah, but not all of them do.
But not all of them do.
Many of them don't.
No, right?
It's a good and a bad thing.
Yeah.
He looks in the mirror and he says, I know what I am. Hand off. No, but let's talk about Tyler Smith a little bit because he's a player coming out of Tulsa.
I watched him in detail.
Yeah,
I didn't think
you were on. I want to remind you, were on with us. We did a show with you called The Intel with Greg Cosell, and he was sort of a fascinating study for you because you felt like he just had to bridge this gap, I think, in pass protection.
Yes, I thought he was a phenomenal athlete with great feet that didn't really know how to pass protect.
Right.
And, you know, again, I'm not with the Cowboys. I don't know what they're taught, how they're taught, but the injury to Smith forced him to, in a sense, have to play left tackle because he was playing left guard. And I had said in my transition, in my evaluation, that I thought he would need to begin his career at guard, which obviously the Cowboys thought
in training camp. Yeah, and it didn't work.
Right.
He got beaten out by McGovern.
Right.
Yes.
So, but I thought, to be honest, that he wasn't really ready to play as a rookie in the NFL.
Right.
I thought he was a great athlete with light feet, great movement, looked the part, but just wasn't really ready to play.
Sure.
Didn't play with any technique at all, undisciplined, a lot of unnecessary movement, you know, just there was no, he wasn't compact at all, and now he's forced to play left tackle. Now, obviously, he's not getting beat on every single snap,
right?
But I think he's a beatable player, and I think that this is a really advantageous matchup for the Eagles.
Adam, we talked about the idea of, although he may have played better than some expectations, this is a Sunday night game. It's a road game.
Yeah.
The silent count may have to be involved. That there will be
it will
ways
be.
to
Communication is
it will be
huge.
involved. Yeah.
Oh yeah. This
be.
to me is where you have an advantage. He has not played in front of a crowd like this.
Right.
And to me, the link, just the atmosphere, communication. This is something, again, he played at Tulsa. This is a big step up for him. And look, the Cowboys actually didn't think he was ready. They weren't going to play him this year.
No.
He's playing because Tyron Smith got hurt. Yeah.
He's not living on Tulsa time anymore.
No.
No.
Is that what? Is that his favorite remark?
No, that's a song. You don't know the song?
I figured that's what it
Didn't know
was.
that song. My
He
fault.
often does that, just so you know, if you're curious.
Jason, I mean, what do you expect from Tyler Smith? And just the idea of a guy playing his first game. We've seen some guys have to play their first game on Sunday Night Football on this end, and it didn't go out very well for them. So
Hey, listen, based on what Tyler Smith's put on tape,
Uh-huh.
everybody is fighting the line to get over there on him.
Yeah.
Everyone wants that opportunity to be over on this side.
Right.
Yeah,
Would you overload his side? Some overload blitzes
you don't need to overload his side.
Oh, he's like, no, just
you don't even have to.
You just want to be lined up over him.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's what everyone is saying right now on our defensive line.
In fact, I would, overload's a relative term because the Eagles are not necessarily a heavy blitz team.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would create a front, particularly when you get into those third downs, where he has to block one-on-one.
Yeah.
Would you
So
try
don't
to do
want the
some
guard
line
help.
games on his side because communication?
Well, I would do that too,
Yeah.
because you want him to have to communicate. You want him to have to be aware. You want him to have to think that through. But I'd also create situations where, a lot of teams now line up with what we call loaded fronts, where they
Right.
put three guys on one side of the center. You can do that opposite him, and you can, let's say, walk up, the linebacker, Edwards or White, as a stand-up three technique. They don't have to rush, but they
Right.
can waste the guard that's next to Smith. And now you get a one-on-one with Smith.
Yeah.
You do things like that. It's all,
And
it's all how you set your fronts.
We've seen plenty of games between good teams that got corrupted when you just had one real area of your offensive line that was just not up to par that
The
night.
one thing that can destroy a game plan is a defensive line.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can have the best game plan in the world and the best players on the outside. Everywhere else you're great. And those guys can't protect the defensive line, or one player can destroy a game. We saw Von Miller freaking win a Super Bowl, him and DeMarcus Ware.
Yes.
Win a Super Bowl by just destroying the Carolina Panthers front line,
Yep.
so offensive line. So it's something that has to be addressed for the Cowboys. They'll have a plan though. Right? They saw what was put on tape. They're going to have a plan in order to counteract people trying to pick on Tyler Smith.
How impressive has Hassan Reddick been, given the feedback that we got on more of a speed? I mean, it seems like he's shown some diversity to his pass rush.
He has. He's gotten better. The coaches had to understand what's the best way to use him.
Right.
And they found that out. We had heard some good things at camp. He's gotten better seemingly every week. He's been a little bit more powerful than we expected. It's been good, man. If he doesn't have 15 sacks, I'm not worried about it because he's absolutely impacted the quarterback. He's been really good. I still think, though, they need one more guy. BG looks very good.
He does.
I know he's not getting the sack numbers, but he looks totally healthy. They could certainly use one more guy, and that's, as you asked earlier in the show, that's something that I think they'll look at. That's the one trade deadline. That and corner would certainly. Oh, the other thing I would add, I know they have enough running backs, but is there a running back out there with size who could protect? it's something they could also look at
It'd
as
be
well.
interesting to see what Trey Sermon is like in pass protection. We haven't really had a chance to see that
Who
yet.
are you going to put on an active in order to get that guy up?
I think the safety, the rookie safety is still on the 50.
you can't play four running
backs. You can't put 4 running backs up.
Yeah, you're not going to have 4 running
It's
backs.
certainly now.
no,
First of all,
yeah,
Boston
yeah.
Scott's back tonight, so that would mean Sermon probably will not be up.
Yeah, no. What I'm just saying in general, the only guy that you can take out of the lineup is Boston Scott.
Right.
Because
Right.
Gainwell actually has so much value in passing, in the passing game.
And
Theoretically.
And they use him a lot when they get in the red zone to run the ball.
Yeah.
He's a third down back who runs the ball really well between tackles and not catching the ball very well. It's sort of antithetical to what a third down back
about the drop that he had
Gainwell.
versus-
He hasn't really. Well, he's got a couple of drops, and he just has not been a big factor in their screen or pass game that I think we thought we might see this year. Question still about Reddick and Josh Sweat, and in regards to Tyler Smith. I don't know if tape shows that he struggles against a speed guy or against a power guy, or if he's good against both. But if you're John Gannon, are you mixing up guys on him, or are you trying to get Reddick around the edge on him? What do you think?
I don't care who it is.
Right.
Like that's just in
You're
general.
basically saying my talent's better than your talent.
If 100%, I don't think you go outside of the scheme of your defense in order to get like some odd matchup where now Aaron Donald ate him for lunch, and Aaron Donald's going to eat most people for lunch, right? So I think if you get a Reddick on him, you get Sweat on him, I think those guys are going to generate good pass rush.
I would love to see Sweat on him.
Yeah.
I mean, not every snap, but I think Sweat has a pretty good variety of moves. He's long. I think Sweat would give him a hard time.
And that is the guy that they've primarily lined up over left tackle this year. All right, well, the one thing we know the Cowboys are going to do is run the ball. They try to establish the run. They don't always run it well statistically, but while I think the public, and especially Philadelphia, views Zeke Elliott as a guy who's been declining year after year, which the stats say he is, his stats against the Eagles do not show a player in decline year after year. He's I couldn't believe when I researched this, but in 10 games against the Eagles, he has 971 rushing yards, 1,317 total yards, 5 touchdowns, and averages 5.2 yards per carry. And it's not just weighted by the first 2 years of his career. He's had good games against them.
In what was the first game last year at Dallas? Did he? So I know they
116 yards and 2 touchdowns in that Week 3 blowout last year against the Eagles. So, Greg, the stats say that Dallas is a middle-of-the-pack running team, but they do try to establish, and I imagine tonight they will try to as well.
They try to run, and I don't think Zeke, through the first 5 games this year, is that guy anymore. I think he's a sustaining grinder. That's what he is. He doesn't have that ability now to really break the second level.
Right.
He doesn't really have re-acceleration ability that he used to have, where he could break the second level. So he's now the guy that gets 4 or 5. I mean, I can't remember whether it was last week or the week before. I think he had 19 for 69, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
That's
not
kind
that.
of his stat line.
He's not that guy.
Right.
Yeah, you know what? It's good for us, but for me it's sad because I think it's a guy that has not because of ability, but external. That's what it seems to me.
Yeah.
Just from a player being in the locker room, a guy that may have fallen out of love with the game of football.
And maybe that's true.
Okay. Maybe.
So Pollard has become.
I just thought all the hit totals and the contact.
And that could be
in the
the
first
case
3
too.
years.
Yeah, that could be the
Could be
case
both.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a physical, he was 220, 225 pound back.
Yes.
Coming out, and he was physical, and he was aggressive, and he looked for it.
Right.
I mean,
Pollard looks so much better though.
Pollard looks like he's moving
And I've been
at
saying
a-
it for 2 years.
at a
Yeah.
different speed.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
And the numbers, it's crazy. He has half the carries.
Yeah.
And has double the production. It's crazy.
Here's the thing on that. Pollard's contract's up, and the Cowboys could get out of Zeke's contract and not owe him a dime after the season.
Well,
So they got.
no-
To me, I would go back to Pollard.
Well, and the thing about Pollard, you have to be careful. And again,
How many carries
this is
could he
This is
handle?
a different discussion, not
Sure.
about tonight,
Sure.
but whether Pollard is sort of a bell cow type back.
Yep.
He may not
Sure.
be. But the point I was going to make for tonight is Pollard's used in multiple ways. You got to be careful with orbit motion, jet sweep action.
Sure.
Not just lining up in the backfield as a runner, which he can do too.
Right.
But you got to be careful with how he gets the ball and be aware. And there's numerous snaps where Pollard and Elliott are on the field at the same time in what everybody calls a pony package with 2 halfbacks. And then they move them around.
Right.
And obviously you'll have a plan for that. that's something you practice during the week.
Sure.
You're not going to see it tonight and go, oh my God, they're on the field together.
Right.
You'll have a plan for that.
The old pony package.
Yeah.
Anybody wondering if Dallas has the gumption to go out and try to trade for Christian McCaffrey? Knowing that what you said they can get out of both.
Yeah,
of those
I don't.
contracts?
Yeah, McCaffrey's owed over $11 million next season.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I think it's a Pollard Zeke show. I hear you though in terms of Zeke, because you do wonder as the season goes along here, will Pollard get the ball more? Will he do more of a factor?
Right.
Because they do need some more juice out of the run game.
It just seems like they're afraid to give the ball to Tony Pollard more because the contract says Zeke's our guy. But if you brought in to McCaffrey, then you might not feel that way.
Pollard is explosive, but he's a little upright. And I'm not sure he's a true volume runner.
Right.
Because I think he's going to take too many shots.
Take good ones.
Good shot. Don't you agree?
Yeah, good shots are the ones that get you out. Ask Sean Clifford from Penn State.
Yeah, he's a little upright. He's explosive, but he's a little upright.
All right. I mentioned his career, Ezekiel Elliott against the Eagles. His 4.8 yards per carry against the Eagles is the third highest for any running back ever against the Eagles, with at least 200 carries behind only the legendary Jim Brown, Tiki Barber, and that's it. And then there's Ezekiel Elliott. So that's pretty good company right there. I mean, he's done a lot of damage in his time. So we will see. Actually, that reminds me. It makes me think about our friends at MOJO and the player stock market.
Yes.
Now, you guys have heard us talk about our partners, MOJO. It is the NFL player stock market. It allows you to invest in position players, quarterbacks, wide receivers, pass catchers like tight ends and running backs. And if you invest in them at the right time and they do well, your share price goes up. If you don't, and they don't do well, your share price goes down. Ezekiel Elliott probably would have been a good guy to have stock in about 5 or 6 years ago.
What year is this for him?
His rookie year was 6 years ago,
16.
right? This is year 6 for him, I believe, right?
He's had a lot of carries in this league.
This is your 7th.
16, 17,
He had a pre-draft visit to the Eagles, and I know it caused a big
he
stir.
has had a lot of
Right. So we were talking about MOJO, and what it does is, I told you, you can buy stock in certain players that they offer. Their prices can go up or down based on their performance. To me, it's like fantasy football meets the stock market. And if you're the type of person that loves, say, the fantasy football draft because you love the sleeper, well, this is your opportunity to buy a guy, anyone we can talk about, at a low price, and then wait for their stock to store.
I talked about Kenny Walker,
the
Seahawks,
exactly, right.
and he's having a big game today, no doubt about it.
Right. Now, example, you guys think the Eagles should run today, right? Miles Sanders, his stock is down 18% over the last few weeks because the Eagles have been throwing the ball a little bit or throwing screens, but he could have a huge night tonight. You can get him at a lesser price because he hasn't had a big game in a few weeks, and then watch his stock soar.
Yeah, so get in early.
I would say get in early, all right? So make sure you download the app on the iOS, the MOJO app, which you can download in New Jersey. Place your bets. Obviously, if you have a gambling problem, we would encourage you to call 1-800-GAMBLER. But make sure you get in with our friends at MOJO. And there are so many players, I think, today. For example, Alec Pierce is a guy who caught a 32-yard touchdown, starting to get more involved in that Indiana. He had low
a good game against
share.
Denver,
He had about 10 targets.
So before they become a factor, get in early.
Right.
Like if you would have gotten Dameon Pierce to the Texans like week 2 or 3,
right?
We started going off, sure,
right.
No doubt about it.
Ramondre Stevenson, another guy.
Perfect.
You could have got a really nice price 3 weeks ago. Now all of a sudden his stock is going up.
Right.
How about Dallas Goedert is up 30% in MOJO value over the last year. That's pretty big rate for him.
Well, his yards per catch leading the NFL at tight end. I mean, he's amazing. He needs to score more.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, what I like is you can build a portfolio. It's not just one player, 2 players. You can build whatever you can afford and then watch your prices go up and then trade at the right time. I just think it's cool. If you're really into the stock market and also into sports, and it's really about your knowledge and how smart you are, that's why people do this stuff. It's not just to win, it's just to brag.
As you just said, how smart you are.
Fantasy football is all about bragging rights, is it not? All right.
So it's the stock market. Be smart. Get in early.
There you go. All right, now we are going to move on to our Player of the Game segment presented by Game Time Watchers. Before we do that, we have inactives. So, Adam, why don't you read the inactives?
All right, so it's Ian Book, as always. Josh Jobe, who was hurt. So that impacts special teams. Reed Blankenship, who generally does not dress. Trey Sermon, because Boston Scott's back. Josh Sills and Teron Jackson, who's out of that edge rusher rotation.
All right, so
Patrick
but no
Johnson
major surprises.
Nothing, no surprises.
All right. Game Time watches, by the way, these are the coolest. I think I saw somebody wearing one today. It's the team logo watch. Game Time watches is the leader in licensed sports watches. Get your favorite NFL, NHL, or MLB team logo watch right now at GameTimeWatch.com. Eagles fans, Game Time Watch has partnered with Inside the Birds and is offering a special promo for 20% off using the code ITB20. That's ITB20 for 20% off at GameTimeWatch.com. That code applies not just for Eagles watches, but for NFL watches and anything not already discounted. So there's a lot of styles to choose from for men, women, kids. Check out the men's varsity style watches, the shiny face, the big team color logo, metallic accents, metal case, and thick black silicone strap make it an everyday style watch. So check out the Varsity Drip Art Edition too at GameTimeWatch.com. I swear I saw someone at breakfast to say I went out at the diner and had the Eagles logo watch. It must have been a Game Time watch. So let us talk about our Game Time watch player of the game. Jason, I will start with you. Who's going to be the player of the game today?
I think I'm going with A.J. Brown if my memory serves.
You were talking about it a lot today. I thought maybe
it seems like you were moving in that direction.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of gave it away there.
Hint of the foreshadowing.
I just think that he's the guy that can be guarded. And you bring him
Trayvon
here for this type of game. So
Yep.
you want your return on investment, MOJO.
And again, his first game ever against the Dallas Cowboys.
He's going to feel that hype tonight. He's going to feel tonight. Oh, boy.
There you go. Greg, who's the player of the game tonight?
I guess if people are listening to the way I spoke, I'm going to say Jalen Hurts. Because I think his running is going to be a factor tonight.
Okay.
And so I think he's my player of the game.
Do you think it's a design run or a I got to
there'll be that too.
Okay.
But I think there'll be scrambles as well because I think he'll react to the color, the pressure, and I think he'll move, and I think he'll make positive plays. Yeah,
Playmaker tonight.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, Adam, your player of the game is?
Micah Parsons.
He's
He's going to line up over my lot because he's not going to get Lane Johnson on the other side. He's going to now. Obviously, they'll move him around. It could be an A-gap blitz, whatever you want to call it. But Micah Parsons is going to be a nuisance tonight. He's going to have a great game. Didn't mean I'm picking the Cowboys to win, though, to be clear.
So wait, you're saying you might be hedging your bet here and picking a different team to win as opposed to player of the game? Does that ever happen?
Yes.
When's that happen?
Has there
ever been a Super Bowl MVP from a losing team?
Yeah.
Has there ever been a Super Bowl MVP from a losing team? Because I do think that happened once, didn't it?
I think that happened one time, right?
I'm sure it did. I can't remember.
If it happened, well, I'll give you a free pass.
I think so.
All right.
It should happen more often.
I don't know why I went with this route. I really thought about it for a while. Probably more collectively minutes than you guys put into your player in the game. I think you guys just
I can tell you that for sure in my case.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't have that poker face.
My Game Time Watches player of the game is Marcus Epps.
Really?
And I just feel like with the Dallas Cowboys always trying to run the ball and him being a physical safety, that he could have one of those
he filled last
7
week
to 10 tackle type games.
Some runs really effectively.
And the way that Cooper Rush has been able to kind of be efficient, he doesn't put the ball down the field a whole lot. I just feel that intermediary area is where he wants to hit the Eagles.
Yeah. Sure.
And I feel like he's going to come up with a pick tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. CeeDee Lamb coverage. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I crazy?
That'd be good.
Yeah, that was good.
Well, that's a separate question.
Yeah, exactly. Entirely.
It is a separate question.
By the way, don't you have something to do tonight?
What's that?
Don't you have something to do tonight before the show ends?
Listen, by the end of the show, which is closing in,
I'm
getting the pipes ready. I have a bet that I have to settle with Jason Avant. I have typed up the lyrics. I know you were so excited.
I know. Feel the reason I'm here.
Really? So it's the fact that we were paying you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So if I just do this with Jason every week, then we can just not pay you and you'll call. All right, great.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's good to know.
Awesome. All right, we're going to get to our predictions for the game here. Of course, we want to thank Rivers again for providing pregame show atmosphere. Rivers is a great place to come down, make your bets. Fantastic recliners, leather seats.
There must be like 2,000 people.
I can barely hear you guys. That's how loud it is.
What?
It's great. What's up? What'd you say?
What?
Of course, they've got the spin the wheel contest. They have their pick'em contest. They have fantastic drink specials here at Jack's Bar and Grill. We're talking about chips and salsa, bottomless chips and salsa. We're talking about the easy peel shrimp. We got the beer special. So if you really want to go and have a great time and take advantage of everything that Rivers has to offer, you have to come to Jack's Bar and Grill. Take advantage of the great food and drink specials. We have people next to us. You can't see them, but they're shoving their faces right now, full of shrimp, full of nachos, and guzzling a lot of beer. So they're having a great time. So we thank Rivers once again for their great hospitality here at Rivers Casino. So let us get into it. By the way, if you go to the Bet Rivers app, or if you're here to place a bet, the Eagles entered the night, and I think it still holds true. They are 6.5-point favorite. That's a pretty big line for a 5-0 team versus a 4-1 team. 6.5-point favorites with a total of 42. Jason, I will start with you. Who's winning and what's the score?
23-20 Birds.
23-20 Birds.
I think it'll be a low scoring
But that's much
game,
different than we got earlier. Okay.
You know what happens?
But-
I think I accidentally typed that wrong. So if we have that wrong on the overlay or the screen, that's my fault.
What was it? What did I choose before?
No, you did choose that. I just realized I typed my score into your name.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's not your fault, it's mine.
Yeah.
I had the whole Michigan-Penn State bet on my mind, and
I would
got
have said
lost
41-17 in that case.
Oh, yeah, I bet you would have. All right, so you have the Eagles winning.
Yep, Eagles
Repeat
winning.
the score one time just so we know.
23-20 Eagles.
23-20. All right, so a little bit higher than the total. You're taking the over.
Yeah, I'll take the over.
But the Eagles do not cover in your mind, but they win a big game.
But
That's
they'll
all
win
that
the
matters.
game, yes.
All right, Gregory.
Did I pick the same score?
You did not. You picked the Eagles to win 20-17.
There you go.
All right.
Still 3-point game. Okay.
I was,
All right.
I think you have two good defenses, and I think that they'll be a factor tonight on both sides.
Gotcha.
So to me, it's not a high-scoring game.
Agree.
Again, you can't. To me, I can't think about games in terms of turnovers or that.
Right.
I just think about it in a normal game.
Game
and
flow.
That's
Yeah.
the way.
To me, it's like if this is a close game or the Eagles win by a lot.
Yeah.
I don't
game
think
or
that
the
the
Eagles win by a
Cowboys
lot.
had the ability to win by a lot.
I would agree with
With Dak
that.
not playing.
Without
yeah.
Dak.
Absolutely
turnover.
agree.
Yeah.
If it's
Right,
a blowout, it's
Yes.
the Eagles.
Right.
I totally agree with you on
Right.
that one. All right, so Greg picks the Eagles to win by 3, no cover, but and a little bit under the total. Adam, what do you got tonight?
I've got it. The Cowboys 20, the Eagles 23 as
A
well.
little drama built into it.
Yeah.
All right, so very similar with you guys, 23-20.
I'm a Weisenheimer.
Again, so nobody has picked the Eagles to cover. They picked the Eagles to win under the total.
6.5's a lot. Wow.
6.5 is a lot. Now, here's the funny thing. I have predicted the Eagles. I'm consistent with our podcast.
Now you're
Friday
negative,
morning.
Nancy. People think you're very negative. Just for the record.
This is the point I'm about to make. I'm predicting the Eagles to win 19-12, which means I'm predicting them to cover.
Okay.
All right, a little under the total.
12.
It's a high-scoring baseball game.
19-12.
So we're talking about 4 field goals for the.
I am.
Could
All right?
be.
So that means the Eagles win by 7. That's bigger
And
than
how did
the
they get to
spread.
19?
I don't do math, Greg. I just come up
Yeah.
with a number.
Why do you have to ask?
19 is
It's
just a
possible.
it's
What are we doing? What are we doing? A midterm?
It's a missed
safe
extra
one.
point.
Yeah, they
your
miss an
number-
extra
you
point.
got your number 2 pencil?
19 is just a missed extra point.
There you go. But the joke of it is, this is the score that I picked on the podcast that we did, and yet after that podcast came out, I got ripped on Twitter for being too loving for Dallas, and yet I'm the only one of us who picks the Eagles to cover.
Yeah, but Jason and I pick the Eagles to win every week, right?
Yeah, not every week.
You have.
But just this year.
This year. No, this year. Yeah, for sure.
So I repeat, I'm the only one that picking the Eagles to cover here. Y'all come at me, but I pick the Eagles to win by more than the spread. Anyway, you can bet the game here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook in Philadelphia or on the Bet Rivers app. Have fun doing so. Big thanks to Rivers. Big thanks to Sky Motor Cars, the teams at Rebel Hill and Public Square. Make sure you check out the post-game show with Adam Caplan and I and Trey Thomas immediately
late
after the
night,
game.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our coverage will be
sleeping.
on InsideTheBirds.com. Now, as I
Let's
promised,
go, baby.
I have to settle a bet because Penn State lost to Michigan.
We taping this? Yes.
Come on, let's go.
Oh my God.
I will now sing the Michigan fight song as we close it out.
1, 2, you know what to do.
Hail to the victors valiant, hail to the conquering heroes, hail, hail
To Michigan, the leaders and best. Hail to the victors valiant, hail to the conquering heroes. Hail,
Wow.
hail to Michigan,
that was
the
Notre Dame.
champions of the West. Go blue.
Enjoy the game, everybody!
Good job.